Ladies and gents, boys and girls, what is going on Wednesday, July the 5th, 2023? As you can see, we are in the new studio. I see Austin Gregory, GA, Colton, Brendan M., Jeff Gullidge, Stephanie Lee. What's going on? Appreciate you all tuning in. Thank you all so much. Hey, we're back from the hiatus. It feels good to be back. It's been too damn long since you and I last spoke. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Obviously, this is a much different look than what we had almost 2 weeks ago, by the way. It's been that long. Almost 2 weeks or so. And I am so excited to get rocking, to get rolling here on this Wednesday, July the 5th. Like I mentioned, guys, we've got a lot to discuss here on this Wednesday. Again, appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. The studio is set up. I've been doing nothing but moving the last, I'd say, really 2 weeks or so. Like since the Daily Crow ended almost 2 weeks ago to the date, and ever since we took our hiatus, all I have been doing is moving from apartment to house, but I'm very excited. You see, we've got the new setup in here. The studio is all set up. The house is coming together, and really, really excited, guys. Again, appreciate you all, by the way, following along, showing love, showing support during the downtime. I know, obviously, this time of year, things a bit slow with no football on right now, no sports really, unless you're watching MLB or the NBA draft happen, of course, what have you. But I'm very excited as today we dive in all things Gamecocks football. Believe it or not, the preview content, the preseason content gets rolling today. And I could not be more excited, guys. We got a packed show for you, a lot to get into here on this Wednesday. Of course, hour number 3. We have our Q&A Power Hour. I'll take your questions, your comments, your calls. And for those who call in, by the way, I've got a special surprise for you guys. You'll have to call in to find out what it is. But I got a special surprise for you all. So make sure you do that. In hour number 2, I believe we're going to have my good friend Jake Crane on the show. I know Jake is busy doing some things right now. So if we're unable to have Jake, I do have some things prepared to discuss and talk about. So hopefully we are getting Jake Crane in here at 1:15. Of course, guys, with it being July 4th, which, by the way, July 4th holiday. Hope you guys had a fantastic Independence Day. Hope you all had a great extended weekend as well. You know, we're still kind of shuffling some things. Our good friend, excuse me, guys, our good friend JD Piquel, he is out of town right now. So I asked Jake if he would mind sliding into Wednesday because JC Sherbert is actually going to join us on Friday. And our good friend Mark Ryan, of course, he'll be in his normal Thursday slot tomorrow. Anyways, though, Jake Crane expected to join us in hour number 2. And of course, guys, hour number 1 is jam-packed. I've also got other things I want to dive into, discuss, let you all know what's going on because a lot has happened since the last time you and I spoke, but I am so excited and so fired up to get into this preseason football content. Again, guys, this is just the beginning. Over the next 2 months, basically 2 months, we will break down, we will dissect, we will predict everything with Gamecocks football. It's going to be a glorious time, and I'm really excited. One of the most fun times of year as a content creator. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it, guys. And I want to start by saying this, because as was expected, there's always some sort of backlash on social media or reaction, if you will. But every single summer, right? Every single summer, what I like to do, I like to categorize South Carolina's football schedule in wins, toss-ups, and losses. And as you all know, listening to this, I don't do that as some sort of cop-out to not make a prediction. No. That's coming later today and tomorrow as we lock in game-by-game predictions for South Carolina's 2023 football season. But I like to categorize these games because, guys, making predictions, believe it or not, it's a process. There's more to it than just look at the schedule, win, loss, we're done, right? It's something where I look at it as a creative act and something where you do your research, you look at the schedule, how things shake out, where games are played. All of that matters. And so when it comes to determining how South Carolina or any team is going to fare in the upcoming season, it is a really good starting point to break down the season in games that you feel confident putting a W next to in heavy black ink, games you feel confident putting an L next to in heavy black ink, and then games that could go either way. And so that is why I do this. That is why I do these wins, toss-ups, and losses, and that is why I release them all to you as well, because it's a great starting point and gives you sort of a gauge on what is possible for South Carolina's football season. So I want to make that very clear. And as you'll see later today and here in just a little bit, we are going to talk predictions. We are going to talk game-by-game predictions for the 2023 football season. When I do these wins, toss-ups, and losses, again, the wins are games I feel confident. When I look at the schedule, just immediately put a W in heavy black ink. When I look at the schedule, there's a loss. Put an L in heavy black ink. And then the games that I'm 50-50. So let's break it down. My wins, toss-ups, and losses for the Gamecocks 2023 football season. We'll start with the losses because there are so few. When you look at this season, this is the fewest sure losses I think that I've ever had coming into a South Carolina football season. And it's because of, and a lot of what we're going to dive into, you guys are going to get tired of hearing the word consistency and or inconsistency by the time toe meets leather. Because as we all know, one of the things South Carolina football has struggled to find is consistency. One week the Gamecocks can do what they did in the swamp and get beat 38-6 by a porous Florida team. And the next week they can go out and drop a 60 bomb on a Tennessee team that was destined for the college football playoff. You just never know with the Gamecocks. But when you look at this schedule, again, the only game that I look at and say, that is a loss, I am putting an L next to that game in heavy black ink, that is the week 3 matchup at Georgia. Guys, I still don't think South Carolina is on the same level as the Georgia Bulldogs. I don't think the Gamecocks on the line of scrimmage are anywhere near ready to compete. And I know for some of you, very few of you, but some of you, that has been sort of your sexy upset pick going into the season. I'm not with you on that. I know Georgia's got to replace their starting quarterback. I know they've got to replace some pieces on defense. But Georgia is the premier program in college football at this point. They are the cream of the crop. They are creme de la creme in college football. And so I look at the schedule. That's the game to me. Going to Athens as well in week 3, a 3:30 kickoff on CBS. South Carolina very well could give Georgia a better game than they gave them last year when the Gamecocks lost 48-7 on the home field, and Stetson Bennett was taking freaking selfies and signing autographs with 10 minutes left to go in that ball game. And I'll drop my full game-by-game predictions for the entire SEC on Friday. But spoiler, I am a believer in Georgia. I think Georgia very well could make it 3 in a row. I think Georgia is damn near a lock for Atlanta in the SEC championship. And I put an L next to this game when I look at South Carolina's 2023 football schedule. So, Georgia, the only for sure loss, though. Let's move over to the win column. Games that when I look at the schedule, I feel confident putting a W next to it in heavy black ink. Don't even need to go into deep research. I just say that's a dub. There are 3 for me: Furman, Jacksonville State, and Vanderbilt. Just 3. Furman, Jacksonville State, and Vanderbilt. Again, Furman, hey, not your typical FCS opponent. We'll get into that more in just a second. Jacksonville State, their first year coming up to FBS at home. That's a dub. And then the game against Vandy, guys, it's interesting. Vanderbilt's going to beat South Carolina at some point. It's going to happen, right? Nothing lasts forever. Carolina's won, 13 straight in that series. I like Clark Lee. Vandy, at some point, they're going to get it done. Until it happens, though, how can you make that game anything other than a win? So that means, guys, I got Georgia as an L, Furman, Jacksonville State, and Vandy as wins. That means I have 8 toss-up games on this schedule. And I understand, guys, I caught some grief this morning on social media when I posted the graphic. I get it. These wins, toss-ups, and losses, they're not all that bold. And yes, as I mentioned before, we're going to make predictions. Don't you worry. That's coming here shortly. But the toss-ups, North Carolina in the season opener in Charlotte, Mississippi State at Williams-Brice Stadium, at Tennessee, Florida, at Mizzou, at Texas A&M, Kentucky, and Clemson. Why are there so many toss-ups, you might be asking yourself? Again, guys, it comes down to the consistency or lack thereof for South Carolina. The Gamecocks are one of those middle-of-the-pack SEC teams where on their best day, they can beat anybody. Maybe even a Georgia can beat anybody. But when they play their worst, as we've seen before, when South Carolina not even plays their F game, when they play their C game, their C- game, we'll say, Mizzou last year happens. 38-6 against a bad Florida team happens. There's such a wide range of possibilities for this South Carolina football team this season. And admittedly, guys, there's a couple of these toss-ups that are closer one way or the other to the win or the loss column. But I mean, for example, the game against Tennessee, Volunteer fans are chalking that up as a W. How can you throw that in the L bucket, putting heavy black ink, an L in heavy black ink? How can you do that after last year? Gamecocks were a 22.5-point favorite. I learned my lesson. I picked 59-13, Tennessee getting the W. I learned my lesson. I'm not doing that again. I'm not giving Carolina 0% chance to win that ball game or any ball game, by the way. Shane Beamer showed me. But after last year, how can you make that a 100% guaranteed loss? Hey, Florida at home, many of you saying, Chris, that's got to be in the W column. How can you after last year, guys? You lost to them 38-6. How can you just say, oh, that's a dub? No chance. No chance Carolina loses that game. How could it not be a toss-up, guys? Texas A&M, you beat them last year, but you've lost 8 of 9. In College Station at Kyle Field, that's a toss-up. Kentucky at home's another one. People are going to say, how could you do it? Devin Leary, Liam Cohen at OC. I mean, you beat Kentucky last year, sure, but it wasn't like it was domination, and they didn't have their starting quarterback. Call it for what it is. That's a toss-up game. Kentucky and Carolina, guys, are kind of right on the same level. Even Mississippi State, because of where it is, I think, early in the season, we'll talk more about this later on, but where it is early in the season, I think most are expecting that to be a really close ball game, a hard-fought game that could go either way. So I feel good about my toss-ups. And then, of course, UNC week 1, I mean, who knows? The Tar Heels are literally favored. So did I sort of cop out in my wins, toss-ups, and losses? Did I go safe? Did I go conservative? I mean, sure, call it for what it is, but we've seen it, guys, on the field firsthand. You look at those toss-ups, the Gamecocks, when they're playing their best, if that Tennessee version of Rattler shows up, they could win 7 or damn near all 8 of those toss-up games. If the Florida version of this football team shows up, They could lose damn near all of them. So, and you guys know, it's not as simple as they'll win the ones they're supposed to, they'll lose the ones they're not, and that'll be it. This is South Carolina football we're talking about, man. You never know what might happen. So again, my wins, toss-ups, and losses going into this season, my schedule breakdown, if you will. Games I feel confident putting heavy black ink next to either way. And L, my losses, I throw Georgia in there. That's the only one. My wins, Furman, Jacksonville State, and Vanderbilt. And there are 8 toss-ups going into the 2023 football season. Like many years prior to this one, toss-up games will inevitably determine the success of year 3 of the Shane Beamer era. Guys, that being said, let's go ahead and jump into our first break of the day. On the side, we'll keep the conversation rolling here on this Wednesday. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow.
Muscle Dougie, ho. Muscle Dougie, ho.
All right, guys, we're back here on this Wednesday. I know you guys keep seeing me messing around with the stream and stuff like that. I am working on adding a wireless mouse to our setup so that I don't have to do this. Okay, there we go. I'm working on adding a wireless mouse to the setup so I don't have to keep leaning forward. And obviously, I want to be able to take you guys questions, stuff like that. So the setup is somewhat still a little bit of a work in progress. Obviously, I'm someone I like to learn as I go. So this is the first stream, the first time we've gone live with this setup, which I absolutely love the setup, by the way, guys. I cannot tell you how excited I am, how happy I am to be in this studio setup. You see the chair, by the way, we've got the chair. You see the merchandise rocking. Obviously, that's going to be a huge game changer for us, just having the merchandise on full display. And we got big things coming, by the way, with the merch. Store relaunch as a whole. I'll have a lot more details on that later in this week. But the store relaunch is happening tomorrow night. Again, I'll give you details on everything that entails, but really, really excited, man. I'm excited for you guys to see the work that we've been doing behind the scenes, man, in the merchandise space and everything that we're doing, not just in regards to our merch, but to enhance the customer experience. I'm so excited to show you guys just what we've been doing, what we've been cooking up, what we've been working on, man. I really want to shout out my guy, Adam, over at Fresh Threads. They're going to be fulfilling our merchandise from now on, and just really, really excited, man, for everything that's coming. So looking forward to that. Again, that will drop tomorrow night. More details on that later in the show, I promise you. But guys, in the meantime, let's keep the conversation rolling. And you might recall a couple of months ago now, I talked about week 1 against North Carolina. And when you talk most important games in a football season, it's always a fascinating conversation because it all comes down to, how do you define importance? How do you define what the most important game is? And even the way that I look at that, the way that I view it has changed. It has evolved because last year, guys, I had egg on my face, right? Going into the 2022 season, I said that if South Carolina lost to Missouri, the reason the Missouri game at home was the most important game of the season was simply this. I felt that if South Carolina lost that football game, there was no way you could sit there and say after the fact that the Gamecocks had a successful season. I felt there was no way that was possible. Well, we all know what happened. Carolina lost to Mizzou, and the rest is history. Gamecocks finished 8-4 in the regular season, a Gator Bowl appearance, and I don't think there's anybody, although Missouri left somewhat of a black eye on year 2 of the Beamer era, I don't think there's anybody that would look back and say that year 2 was some sort of failure because you did not beat the Missouri Tigers. Was it a game you would have liked to have had? Sure, but it did not meet the qualifications which I set out for it. So my view of what the most important game of the season means has changed drastically for me. It has gone from what game must South Carolina win, or really what game can they not lose and still have a successful season. It's gone from that to the game that I feel South Carolina must win to maximize or to reach their full potential in that given season. So if the Gamecocks are going to maximize their win total, if the Gamecocks are going to maximize the season as a whole, they need to win this game. And some of also what goes into this, guys, where is the game at? Could winning this game spark some sort of turnaround, or could it spark a run late in the season, early in the season, what have you. And the beauty of this argument is it's going to be different for everybody. You know, I talked months ago, as I was saying in the beginning, I talked months ago as why I don't feel North Carolina is the most important game of the 2023 football season. And my reasoning is simple. It feels weird to me to label a game in week 1 as the most important game. Because you think about it, guys, there's just so much football left to be played. And as we've seen in the first 2 years of the Shane Beamer era, South Carolina has shown a knack for improving as a football team from week 1 to week 13, which is what you should do. This is what you do when you're a well-coached football team. You improve from week to week to week, and you're a much better team in weeks 10, 11, and 12 than you were in weeks 1, 2, and 3. So UNC is a very important game for South Carolina. It is a swing game, no doubt. It's not the most important game, in my opinion. I think, guys, even with a loss to North Carolina, I think even with a loss in that game, you could still win 7, maybe even 8 games in this season. I don't think there's anybody who would label 8-4. We've already talked about it, right? I don't think there's anybody who would label 8-4 in year 3 of Shane Beamer a failure of any kind. When I look at this season, guys, I feel like my selection may be a bit off the wall to some of you. But when you look at this 2023 football schedule, the way things shake out, my most important game of the 2023 football season, again, I feel like it's an unlikely selection because there are games that I think are much more a toss-up for South Carolina. There are games that, there are more hated rivals on the schedule, if you will. But my most important game of the season, I go to that game October the 14th, coming off of the bye week against the Florida Gators. I understand the chatter around Florida right now. I understand their over-under win total set at 5.5, which is just weird to see for Florida football. I don't care how you feel about the Gators this year. To see that win total for Florida, because so many of us, most of us know Florida as being great, right? We grew up with Tebow, you grew up with Spurrier, whatever. Like, it's weird to see Florida down and out like this, which is another reason why it's the most important game. Gamecocks got drugged by the Gators a season ago. I mean, drug up and down the field. It was ugly, right? And you look at the front half of this schedule, which we're going to dive into game by game in just a second. It is a gauntlet, right? It's a gauntlet, no doubt. South Carolina's got to go to Athens, to Knoxville, a tricky game with Mississippi State sandwiched in between. North Carolina, of course, in the season opener. Hey, there's a chance you might start 2-3. Even if you're 3-2, if you're going to maximize the full potential of this season, if you're going to hit that 8-win mark, God forbid you're going to keep the ascent alive and you're going to hit that 9-win mark, Florida is a game that you have to have. Coming off a bye week, on your home field. And again, I list it as a toss-up. I know many of you are going to say, Chris, Florida's terrible. The Gamecocks are going to drag them. That's an easy dub. I want to say that. But look at last year. That wasn't a good Florida team last year, guys. I recall last year, all we talked about was how porous the Gators defense was and what happened, right? The rest is history. I think when you look at the way the schedule shakes out, you've got a really tough first 5 games, and then you have that bye week. By game number 6, your offense should be clicking, right? You're no longer green on defense, right? Because you've got some things you're replacing. You're no longer going to be green and experienced on defense, if you will. It'll be time at that point in the season to really start showing that progression. And I think that Florida game could set you up for a big second half of the season, a time of year in which, guys, we've seen the Gamecocks under Shane Beamer play their best football in the second half. It's been the starts that have given them more trouble than anything, right? I mean, you look back at last year, Georgia State was sloppy. Arkansas was ugly. Georgia was abysmal. Even Charlotte in week 4 and SC State in week 5 were rough games. You look back at year one, you beat EIU, who shouldn't have been on the same field as you. And then week 2, you almost lose to East Carolina. Week 3, you get drubbed by Georgia. So there have been slow starts in the Shane Beamer era. And especially if you're sitting there at 2-3, a win against Florida is a must. Also, guys, when you think about this game from the SEC East hierarchy perspective, Florida is down and out right now, right? It's Georgia at the top, and I want to say Vandy at the bottom, but I tell you what, Florida's challenging them. Gators just lost to the Doors last year. But we all know Georgia's number 1, and it's a shuffle, really, between 2 through 6. Who fits where, right? Between South Carolina, Tennessee, Missouri, Kentucky, Florida. And I'm going to say Vandy's down at 7. I feel confident saying that, no offense to Clark Lee, because I love the guy, but Vandy's down at 7. When it comes to SEC East hierarchy, if you're going to continue to take steps forward as a program, you have got to take advantage of the Florida Gators. You've got to take advantage of them being down and out while you can. Because Billy Napier is doing a great job on the recruiting trail. Florida will be back to respectable. Whether it's under Napier or somebody else. Like Florida, we all know. They're going to get talent. They'll be back. You've got to take advantage of the Gators this year. You lose to Florida, and I feel like things could go somewhat sideways. Because I have this feeling that you're going to be looking for sort of that big breakout game, if you will. And I know Florida is not some high-flying, high-profile opponent going into this season. They're not expected to do much, but it's a game to maximize the full potential. You have to have it. At home at Willie B, you got embarrassed last year. It is a game South Carolina absolutely must have, and for those reasons and more, it's my most important game for the Gamecocks in the 2023 football season. Guys, that being said, let's go ahead and jump into another break. On the other side, it's prediction season, and it's time, finally, my game-by-game score predictions for South Carolina's 2023 football season on the other side of this break. Ladies and gentlemen, appreciate you all tuning in. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow.
Muscle Dougie, ho. Muscle Dougie, ho.
All right, guys, we're back here on the Daily Crow this Wednesday, July the 5th, 2023. Again, appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Hope you all enjoyed your July 4th, your extended weekend, if you will. And I'm so happy to be in this studio space, man. I love the setup here. Obviously, there's some things to tinker with, like lighting, for example. It feels like it might be a little bit bright on our end, but either way, would love to hear your feedback. Would love to hear your thoughts, man. I just absolutely love this setup with everything we have in the background. This new chair is super comfy, by the way. Love it, man. The vibes in here are absolutely electric. The vibes are incredible. So, again, let me know your thoughts. I would love to hear it. Anyways, guys, Jake Crane may be calling in, he says, at 1 o'clock. We will see if that works for him. Either way, with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into it. My game-by-game score predictions for the 2023 football season as year 3 of the Shane Beamer era gets underway at South Carolina, and it gets underway in big-time fashion. Charlotte, North Carolina in prime time, a 7:30 kickoff on ABC as the Gamecocks take on the North Carolina Tar Heels, a very familiar foe. And when you look at this game, UNC has been the favorite all offseason, a 1.5-point favorite, which has confused me somewhat. And I know there's a lot of love and hype around Drake May. You know, is he going to go number 1 overall in the NFL draft? What type of season could he have? He was electric as a true freshman for, I'd say, 75% of their season. Really struggled down the stretch. Right, offensively, and it's interesting how similar, by the way, these two teams are. South Carolina, gunslinger returns, brand new OC, some question marks up front. UNC, same exact thing. Drake May is back. They've got question marks on the offensive line. They do have a deep stable of running backs, but a brand new OC as Phil Longo has departed to Wisconsin. Defensively, both of these teams with questions to answer. Who's going to be able to get more stops? It might simply come down to that. But it's felt like from the jump that the wrong team has been favored in this ballgame. I know many of you have expressed that as well, that the wrong team was a 1.5 or 2 or 2.5 point favorite. It's so cliche to say that, whichever quarterback plays better, that's the team that's going to win. But this really, truly does feel like a game in which it's going to come down to quarterback play, guys. Who do you trust more? Spencer Rattler or Drake May? Who makes fewer mistakes? Because we've seen Spencer Rattler be brilliant. We've seen him be downright terrible at times. Drake May, same thing. He was great 3 quarters of their season last year. Really struggled down the stretch. And I believe they lost 4 of 5, maybe 4 in a row, maybe 5 in a row, actually, something like that. I think it was 4 in a row at the end of the season they lost, culminating with a loss to Oregon in their bowl game. And this is a real challenge and a real test for Gamecocks offensive coordinator Dowell Loggins, because you've got to come out the gate firing. There is no grace period. There is no EIU. There's not even a Georgia State to sort of get your feet under you. If South Carolina does not score 30-plus, in my opinion, they don't win this football game. I think it's going to be an offensive game. The total in Vegas is 60.5. With that being said, does it hit that number? We'll talk more gambling as we get closer to the season. Does it hit the 60.5 number? I'm not sure it's a guarantee that it does, guys, just because issues on the line of scrimmage for both sides. Brand new OCs on both sides. So this is a game that could get off to somewhat of a sluggish start. Also, guys, it's prime time, season opener, under the lights. We all know season openers are weird, right? I mean, it's first time hitting somebody else in forever. there could be some dust, some cobwebs, if you will, to get us going. But I do think there's going to be a lot of offense. I think it's going to be a classic quarterback battle. Spencer Rattler against Drake May. Where are South Carolina's biggest deficiencies going into this football season? Where are the biggest question marks? Offensive line and defensive line. You can throw running back in there as well, but we'll just say run game and stopping the run. Run game and stopping the run. Line of scrimmage are major question marks. It's a major question mark for the Gamecocks this year. North Carolina will be able to score. South Carolina getting pressure on Drake May will be key. I'll just say this. While the Gamecocks have deficiencies in those areas that I mentioned, I do not believe that North Carolina will have the athletes up front on both lines of scrimmage to expose that. I think top to bottom, I think South Carolina has a better roster than the North Carolina Tar Heels. And I think that's what will show in Charlotte, North Carolina. I think it'll be a great back and forth quarterback battle. I think Spencer Rattler will come in with a chip on his shoulder, wanting to prove that, hey, everybody's talking about Drake May. I'm pretty damn good too. And my guy Juice Wells over here, just watch what he can do. Expect Trey Knox to get involved early. I think South Carolina's running game and the offensive line as a whole could look, I will not be surprised if we leave week one feeling better about the offensive line than we probably should, because I just don't think, and I mean that respectfully, I just don't think UNC has the bodies of an SEC caliber team up front. For that reason, I've got South Carolina edging out UNC in what I think is going to be a really fun back and forth offensive type of ball game. Lock me in. Give me Gamecocks 31, North Carolina 27 in a thrilling season opener. South Carolina starts year 3 of the Shane Beamer era 1-0. In week 2, Gamecocks come home, the home opener at Willie B, as Furman comes to town. This one's interesting, right? Because if you really, you look at it, chalk up Furman as a W, whatever. But the Furman Paladins, they are not your typical FCS opponent, guys. Just ask those folks in the upstate. Because Clemson played this same Furman team last year. A Furman team, which, by the way, returns their quarterback, returns their running back. A preseason rank by most polls that I've seen, a preseason top 10 FCS team. So I do not think this is a ball game where Carolina just rolls out their helmets. They're going to win this game by 28, 35 points. You might recall last year, Clemson was outgained in their game against Furman. And the only reason I bring that up is to let you guys know that, Furman's got some ball players. Do they have SEC caliber athletes? Absolutely not. Is this a game South Carolina should win, will win? Yes. But Furman will come in inspired. They'll come in motivated. They'll come in fired up. And they will not come in intimidated. We all know it is a game under the lights at Williams-Brice Stadium. I believe it's a 7 o'clock kickoff, 7:30, excuse me. A 7:30 kickoff on SEC Network Plus. So Willie B will be rocking, especially after a big week 1 win against North Carolina. South Carolina gets the dub. But I think it's much more interesting than the home faithful would like. I would not be surprised if early on in this game, we don't see Furman hanging around. And we saw the Gamecocks guys struggle in these type of ball games last year. You had a 1-point lead against Charlotte at halftime. Even South Carolina State hung around for a while until it got out of hand late. I think Furman actually gives you a good game early on. Gamecocks will pull away. Would not be surprised if Furman scores one in junk time to make it closer than it actually is. But I've got Carolina winning this game, moving to 2-0. Gamecocks 35, Furman 20. Again, I think the Furman Paladins, they got their quarterback back, their running back, top 10 preseason FCS team. This is not your typical FCS cupcake type of game in week 2, but the Gamecocks do get the job done by a score of 35-20 to move to 2-0 on the season. Week 3, South Carolina travels to Athens, Georgia, the SEC opener, to take on the Georgia Bulldogs. Saturday, September the 16th, a 3:30 kickoff on CBS. And as I mentioned earlier, guys, in my wins, toss-ups, and losses, never doubt Shane Beamer in the sense of giving him 0% chance. As we saw last year, and certainly Tennessee and Georgia, different beasts. Georgia is a different beast. They're the cream of the crop when it comes to college football. But I gave the Gamecocks literally 0% chance to beat Tennessee last year, and I had to eat my words for the following week. I looked like a damn fool, as did many of us, by the way. So never give Shane Beamer and company a 0% chance. But remember when I talked about the offensive line and the defensive line and the deficiencies up front? North Carolina's not going to have the athletes to expose you. Furman certainly is not going to have the athletes to expose you. Guys, the Georgia Bulldogs, they've got all the athletes they need and more to make South Carolina's life a living hell for 60 minutes. Will the Gamecocks hang tough early? Sure. But unfortunately, South Carolina is just not there yet. They're not there yet, I should say. South Carolina is just not there yet. And I don't even think this is not a game. Will South Carolina win? How many times does Carolina cross the 50? That is genuinely the way I look at this ball game. You guys know I like Spencer Rattler, like Juice Wells. I think the defensive side, going to be some question marks. We'll dive more into this next week when I talk offense, defense, special teams. We'll break it all down. There are a lot of positive things happening in Columbia. But South Carolina is nowhere near Georgia right now, as was evidenced by last year when you lost 48-7 on your home field. Brand new quarterback. I understand. This is their SEC opener too. Brand new quarterback. What does Carson Beck do? But he doesn't have to do a whole lot, guys. Stetson Bennett didn't have to do a whole lot last year. It was a lot of swing pass and play bully ball. Georgia's loaded on the offensive side. Yes, they have new faces on defense. But guess what, guys? These new faces, they're tomorrow's draft picks. And I think there is a major talent gap still between Georgia and South Carolina, especially up front. The Gamecocks have question marks where you cannot afford to have question marks when you're taking on a team like Georgia. For that reason, I've got the Bulldogs, and I've got the Bulldogs big in this one, as South Carolina will struggle in all facets of the game. Give me Georgia 41, South Carolina 10, as the Gamecocks drop their first game of the 2023 season. Again, guys, I just think it's a game that could get away from you because Georgia's got such an advantage in the trenches. They're not going to have to do anything fancy. They're not going to have to do anything special. They can line up and just run it down Carolina's throat. And they can line up, and they're going to make South Carolina one-dimensional. They're going to take away Juice Wells, and then what? And then what? And then Spencer Rattler, especially if he gets sort of in his gunslinger mode, gunslinger mentality, he's forcing the balls, trying to make things happen. That's where it can get really ugly. South Carolina's line of scrimmage will not be exposed in the first 2 weeks. Week 3 against Georgia, it will, and I think that'll lead to the first loss of the 2023 football season. Week 4 against Mississippi State, Saturday, September the 23rd. And this is a time of transition for the Mississippi State Bulldogs under the new head coach, Zach Arnett. Obviously, RIP, the Pirate, Mike Leach, who's no longer with us, the late, great Mike Leach. Mississippi State transitioning offensively from the air raid we all knew and love under the Pirate to more of a pro style, right? Will Rogers going to be under center more. It's not going to be throwing it 60 times a game, what have you. Are they able to make that adjustment? Defensively, Mississippi State is just known for being stingy on the defensive side. They're known for, just having nasty defense, especially on the defensive front. This is where I'm going to lose a lot of you. So brace yourselves, because you thought you had TSUS figured out. You thought you had yours truly figured out. when I go into making predictions, guys, listen, I have an idea of what I'm going to do, but I really genuinely sit down and whatever comes to me, whatever comes upon me, that's what I pick. It's worked out the first 2 years, by the way, the Beamer era. I had 6-6, 3-5 in year one. Gamecocks went 6-6, 3-5. Last year, I had 8-4, 4-4 in SEC play. Gamecocks went exactly 8-4, 4-4. Did I miss a game or two? Sure, but the Gamecocks hit those exact numbers. And as I mentioned previously, when South Carolina plays their best, they can beat anybody. And when South Carolina plays their C minus game, they can lose to anybody. I look at this Mississippi State game, probably the biggest trap game on the schedule because, I saw it this morning on social media. Mike Leach has passed. Mississippi State's going to stink this year. That's what everybody is saying. That's what everybody thinks because nobody knows what to make of Mississippi State. Do I think Mississippi State's going to be some world beaters? No. But I view Mississippi State with Will Rogers at quarterback, who I think is one of the best in the SEC, very underrated because he plays for Mississippi State. I view Will Rogers and Mississippi State, as Mississippi State is North Carolina with better lines of scrimmage. I think the Gamecocks coming off that loss to Georgia, they're beat up. I could see this being a nooner at Williams-Brice. And we've seen it time and time again. South Carolina have one of these games. I think that game this year is Mississippi State. I think Mississippi State will win the battle in the trenches. I think South Carolina, guys, has real issues up front. So top to bottom, is State a more talented football team than South Carolina? Do they have more explosive playmakers than the Gamecocks? Not necessarily. But in the trenches, that's why you see the inconsistencies. That's why you see wacky results. I think that's what you get in this ball game. I think this is the biggest trap game on the schedule. I think South Carolina coming off that loss to Georgia, they'll come home licking their wounds. Mississippi State is going to be fired up this year, by the way, guys. We talk about, their coach passed. They got a new coach. They're done. Like, you don't think they're going to be playing with a chip on their shoulder? You don't think they're going to be fired up? I think they'll do so. I think they'll look at the South Carolina game as a big opportunity to, a big early pivotal game for them. I think Mississippi State comes into Williams-Brice Stadium and pulls the upset. I think Mississippi State comes into Williams-Brice, pull the upset, give me Bulldogs 24, South Carolina 17. And again, I know I just lost a lot of you. I understand. I get it. But as you and I all know, this thing never goes chalk. That's not how South Carolina football works, guys. You know that. And I think the Gamecocks, again, licking their wounds, coming off the Georgia game. Hey, what's the health of the football team at that point? You got to factor in injuries, by the way, when you're doing these predictions, because you're not going to finish the season with the same ones you started with. It's just inevitable. South Carolina, a team still early in the season, I think, trying to figure it out on the lines of scrimmage. Maybe Dowell Loggins isn't quite clicking the way we thought. Secondary still kind of in disarray. Got 2 new corners. Linebackers a question. You got Will Rogers, one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC. I could see it. And I've got Mississippi State, Will Rogers, and that team out-dueling the Gamecocks 24-17. South Carolina gets upset to fall to 2-2 and 0-2 in the SEC. Following that ball game, South Carolina will travel to Knoxville to close out the month of September, Saturday, September the 30th, at Tennessee. And as I mentioned earlier, guys, there are toss-up games, or games that I listed as toss-ups, that are much closer to the win category or much closer to the loss category. Tennessee, for me, is much closer to the loss category. When you factor in what Tennessee has this season, and I understand they got to replace a lot, Hendon Hooker, Jalen Hyatt, no longer there. But you guys have seen the hype, the hoopla around Tennessee football. Joe Milton thought to be the next guy, the next dude for them because of the offensive system. They're still going to be really good offensively, and it sounds like they've improved defensively. This is a game, though, you have to label as a toss-up after what happened last year. It would not be fair, I think. I don't think it'd be giving Shane Beamer and South Carolina the credit they deserve to throw this game in the lost bucket, because as last year showed us, you just never know, right? Shane Beamer and Josh Heupel have faced off twice. There have been 2 blowouts. Tennessee's blown out Carolina in year 1. Gamecocks blew out the Vols in year 2. So what happens in year 3? This is a big game for many reasons, right? South Carolina wants to establish they're still ahead of Tennessee. Tennessee fans, obviously, I mean, this is a game, you listen to them talk, man. This game is circled. Of all the games on the schedule, this game is circled. And Tennessee fans, they don't sound like they're going to be happy just winning this game. No. The Vols want to win it by 70. They want to win it by 100 if they can. I don't think that'll happen. I think South Carolina, going into Knoxville, going into Neyland, licking their wounds, I think Carolina is going to bring it to Tennessee. I really do. I think it's going to be a back-and-forth shootout type of game. I think Tennessee's still there offensively. I think South Carolina, this could be sort of the first signs of that offense starting to roll a bit. I think Tennessee still got issues to figure out, and the Gamecocks showed last year, hey, they kind of have the book on what the Vols want to do. But in Neyland, in Knoxville, I think Tennessee, guys, is just going to be too much. I think Tennessee, this is a game. If there's one game that Tennessee will not allow themselves to lose this year, it's this game. The Gamecocks are not going to sneak up on Tennessee this year. It's not going to be this, well, we're favored by 22.5. You know, we're just kind of coming to this one like whatever. No. This is the one Tennessee's got circled. I think there's a better chance they lose to Florida in the swamp than they lose to South Carolina. Because of what happened last year, the revenge factor. I think it's close early. I think it's back and forth. I don't think it's going to be the blowout maybe Vols fans want, but I think Tennessee will exact their revenge. Give me Vols 45, Gamecocks 28. So South Carolina going into the bye week, sitting at 2-3, 0-3 in SEC play. Not the start that Gamecock Nation was hoping for. The bye week is going to be a massive week for South Carolina this year, a week of sort of looking in the mirror, taking some accountability, figuring things out offensively under Dowell Loggins, maybe making some changes, what have you. I think the bye week comes at a great time because the following week, and to kick off the month of October, you have the Florida Gators, Saturday, October the 14th. And this is sort of the reverse situation of the Tennessee game, guys. Again, there are toss-up games or games I listed as toss-ups I think are much closer to L's. I think are much closer to wins. As I said previously, Florida is the most important game of the season. And I think it will actually work out that way to where South Carolina must beat Florida. This game turns into a must-win. They shellacked you a season ago, and you're going to be reeling at 2-3, 0-3 at SEC play. Something's got to give. Something's got to give. It's got to go one way or the other. Either you take down Florida or your whole season is going to go sideways if you don't take down the Gators. Gamecocks looking for their first SEC win in the month of October. Florida is a team that scares me. The way everybody's so down and out on them, they've still got talent. This is Florida. They've still got talent, and they can still run the football, which South Carolina could give them some fits. I think coming off the bye, though, there is just no way after a 2-3 start, 0-3 in SEC play. I don't think there's any way the Gamecocks drop this game, especially after what happened last year. It's homecoming at Williams-Brice Stadium. I think the Gamecocks will be fired up in this one, motivated, inspired, looking to start a big second half of the season. And I think Carolina does get their first SEC win of the season against the Florida Gators. Give me South Carolina 31, Florida 20 in a game that I think where it all kind of finally starts. Maybe it starts to click a little bit, right? You sort of get off the schneid, you get that first SEC win, and you go into the second half of your season with maybe a little bit of momentum, and also knowing that, okay, the schedule's going to soften up for us a bit in the second half, and we're going to be a much better football team in the second half than we were in the first half. So again, I've got you 3-3, 1-3 overall at the halfway point, beating North Carolina, Furman, and Florida, and losing to Georgia, Mississippi State, and Tennessee. 3-3, 1-3 at the halfway point. And my question is this: what's the overall mood of the fan base and the program at that point? Because I think the expectations are pretty realistic going into this season. Guys, I would argue the hype train was much more intense going into last year than this year, believe it or not, because of the question marks, because of some of the deficiencies. I feel like the conversations around South Carolina football are much more realistic than what we were having last year. I mean, we had people last year calling in saying Gamecocks are going to go 10-2. I have not heard that chatter this year. But what's the mood? What's the feeling around South Carolina football going into the second half of the year? What will be a pivotal second half? I think there will be adjustments to be made. I know it's not going to be the start that some want, 3-3, 1-3 in SEC play, but I think you have to keep in mind, guys, the schedule's a gauntlet. And could Carolina beat Mississippi State? Sure. Could they start 4-2? Sure. But it's South Carolina football, guys. You and I both know it never goes chalk. It never goes how we expect. And so I very well could see that 3-3, 1-3 start for South Carolina in the first 6 games of the 2023 football season. Guys, we had Jake Crane actually call in at 1 o'clock, but I did not want to interrupt my game-by-game predictions. Let's see here if we can get Jake on the line. Give me just 1 second. Let's see. Give me just 1 second, guys. If you guys haven't tuned out yet after my Mississippi State pick. Oh, goodness. 'Tis the season, folks. 'Tis the season. Let's see. Let's see if we can call him back.
Hello.
Jake, what's going on, my friend? Can you rock right now or no?
Yeah, I can. I can go ahead. Give me 2 seconds before I can walk outside.
Awesome.
I'm on my way right now. Are we live?
We are live. Yes, Jake. The reason, by the way,
world.
Jake, listen, Jake, the reason I didn't answer your call, because that was on purpose. No offense. I was in the middle of giving my game-by-game predictions for the first 6 games of South Carolina's football season. So I was like, I got to get this finished right before I get my guy Jake on. Would you like to hear the picks I have made for the first 6 games? So I do it in 2 parts. Part 1 today, first 6. Tomorrow, part 2, I'll give the last 6. And, of course, that'll be my overall prediction. I'll give you my first 6 if you'd like to hear them.
Man, I would love to. First off, I want to say congrats on the SEC Media Days, my friend. They let you out of Azkaban. I'm really excited to come out here and explore the wizarding world with the rest of us. But now, man, listen, I'm married now, so I know what it's like to not have my phone calls answered. But yeah, let me hear them.
Well, Jake, first things first, man, I appreciate that. And I cannot wait to see you and the gang at SEC Media Days. And certainly the content will be legendary. But anyways, first 6 games for me, Jake, this is how I see it playing out. I got South Carolina taking down UNC 31-27 in the season opener, starting out 1-0. Beat Furman.
Woo.
I think it's going to be a sloppy game week 2. Furman, not your typical FCS opponent. I got 35-20. Again, the Paladins, get this, Jake, they outgained Clemson in a ball game last year. So I think Carolina gets the dub, but after an emotional season opening win, could see it being a little bit closer than it probably should be. I think Georgia week 3 in Athens, I got 41-10 dogs. I don't think Carolina's there on the line of scrimmage. I think the question, Jake, and this might sound harsh, is how many times does Carolina cross the 50? I mean, that's genuinely my question. 41-10 Georgia. Here's where I might lose you. I got Mississippi State coming into Williams-Brice Stadium and pulling the upset, 24-17. Gamecocks fall to 2-2, 0-2 in SEC play. I think coming off of that Georgia game, you're beat up. I think it's the biggest trap game on the schedule. Carolina's still figuring some things out with Dabble Loggins early, still have somewhat of an inexperienced secondary. And, Jake, I'll tell you this. Will Rogers, I think, is maybe the most underrated quarterback in the SEC. I do not buy this whole narrative that Mississippi State's going to fall off a cliff because the late, great Pirate, I think, passing away. If anything, I think State is going to be fired up to make a point this season. And so, again, while I don't think top to bottom they're a more talented football team than South Carolina, I could very well see Will Rogers. Also, line of scrimmage. I could see line of scrimmage giving Carolina fits. To me, Jake, they're North Carolina with the quarterback situation. They're North Carolina, but they're better up front because I don't think UNC is going to have the athletes up front to expose South Carolina week 1. I think Mississippi State does have it. I could see this being like a nooner. It's got Jefferson Pilot, by the way, just written all over it for whatever reason.
Oh, yeah, all 9 of the days.
Yeah. So, anyways, at Tennessee, I think it's an emotional, close game early. I got Tennessee pulling away. I think if there's one game Tennessee does not lose this year, it's this game. I got Vols 45-28. Then the bye week comes, so you're 2-3, 0-3 in SEC play going into the bye week. I got the Gamecocks beating Florida on the home field. Florida, what are they going to be? Over-unders 5.5. I think they're going to be a little bit better than people are expecting, but South Carolina, I do think, will get the dub 31-20 against the Florida Gators to get their first SEC win on October the 14th. 3-3, 1-3 at the halfway point. What say you about those picks?
Man, I don't think you're far off there. The way I see it, I'll go game by game. The North Carolina game, I think it's going to be an old-fashioned shootout. I think South Carolina ends up kicking a game-winning field goal. They win 48-45, maybe in OT, maybe not in OT, but I don't know if anybody's going to be able to stop anybody in that game just because of look, in North Carolina losing Phil Longo, I don't think enough people are talking about that. Drake May's a witch. Like I said, I think they're going to score, 42 points, somewhere around there, 45 points. But I like South Carolina in a hell of an opening game. I think that, and obviously Florida State and LSU are going to be the 2 best opening games of the college football season. Game 2 against Furman, like you said, coming off that North Carolina game. South Carolina may sludge around a little bit in the first half, but I think they just out-athlete them coming off that big high. I would put it somewhere around, let's go 38-20. So somewhere around where you were. Third game is Mississippi State, you said? Or no, at Georgia.
At
correct?
Georgia, week 3. Yes.
Yeah, good luck in that one. Let's play a game of hold my hand and pray to God. That's Georgia will run away with that one just because up front. I think South Carolina will be a little bit more competitive offensively in that game this year just because of how bad it was last year and a little bit of new blood there at the OC spot. I think they beat Mississippi State. I like Zach Arnett. Obviously, it's a very tragic situation that happened with Mike Leach. He's a guy that came on our show a bunch. We have a ton of respect for him and the way he went about his business. But I do think South Carolina finds a way to win that one. I got to see who Mississippi State plays before they play South Carolina if you don't have that pulled up. Because I can't remember Mississippi State's the top half of their schedule off the top of my head right now. And then you've got Tennessee or Florida, I believe you said.
So Tennessee after Mississippi State, then a bye, then Florida.
Yeah, look, Tennessee's going to be pissed off for greatness in that one. Do I believe in Joe Milton? Look, I got to see him throw the changeup. Yeah, the dude can throw it 300 yards. That's fantastic. Yeah, he works hard. But like I've said on this show before, my dishwasher works hard. You got to go out there and be able to make the throws. I hope he does. It'd be a great story. I enjoy Tennessee being good. I think it's good for the SEC. Obviously, I think it's good for college football. But I think Tennessee wins that one. I think it's going to be a little bit closer than what people think, even after what happened last year. And then, look, the Florida game right now with Billy, if Graham Mertz is the guy, man, I just don't believe. I just again, it's something where I've watched the kid play for a while. I know Wisconsin ran a very archaic offense, even though they did win games. I don't believe in Florida this year from a depth standpoint. So you went 3-3, correct?
Yes, 3-3, 1-3.
I'll go 4-2. Give me 4-2 with that game against Mississippi State. That's the one where we're different there. Everything else, man, I think you're pretty much spot on.
Well, the biggest thing, Jake, too, is again, we all know it's not going to go chalk. Like, I feel like you have to go out of your way when picking college football to predict things that are unlikely, that you're not expecting to happen, because especially with South Carolina, man, the inconsistencies, and I've talked about this, Jake, that I really believe the reason, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, because obviously, again, you're a football guy, you've been in there, you know more X's and O's than I do. I feel like one of the biggest reasons for South Carolina's inconsistencies over the years, because you talk to any Gamecock fan, Jake, they're going to tell you, typical South Carolina, they win ones they're not supposed to, they lose ones or they win ones, in games that they're underdog, they're not supposed to win, and then they'll turn around and lose a game they're supposed to win. I just think when you're not where you need to be up front on both lines of scrimmage, there are certain games where, like, maybe the opponent isn't flashy or sexy, like Mizzou, for example, last year. They're not some flashy, sexy opponent. That's not like losing to Georgia, but Missouri was legitimate in the trenches. And they exposed South Carolina, and they made them one-dimensional. And so I think that's why you see the inconsistencies, because of South Carolina's lack of, and they're fixing this in recruiting, but when you have the question marks and the deficiencies in the trenches like the Gamecocks have had for what feels like forever, I think that's where the inconsistencies creep in.
For sure. Look, it's a game that's going to be decided up front. I mean, how have we seen these teams that have risen up to become the dominant teams in college football? They did that up front. They didn't just do that with skill players. Skill players are like, the strawberry and whipped cream on top of the ice cream. The trenches is where the ice cream is. And look, it's a battle for depth. A lot of people don't realize. They're like, oh, look at this starting five. Man, the starting five is fantastic. Well, the odds of that starting five starting every game together are slim and none. So when you look at South Carolina, it's building depth, and that's such a long process because you have to develop high school kids. The transfer portal is great, but there's not a lot of big-time offensive tackles and defensive ends that are coming to the transfer portal that you can just sit here and supplement yourself every year on outside of, Bama or some of these teams that are the top dogs right now. So when it comes down to it up front, at the end of the day, that's where South Carolina is going to have their biggest fight. That's where Shane's having his biggest fight in recruiting. I think he's doing a good job, but it's impossible to trick people all year, right? How do you get beyond not having the best depth up front or the most talent up front? You have to kind of smoke and mirrors people. A lot of screens, pitching backwards, as I call it, throwing change-ups on the first pitch, things like that. And that just doesn't work forever. Sometimes it hits and you catch the breaks and you win games you're not supposed to. But while you're building it up, that's why you just need a spark. I talk about this with Auburn. An 8-4, 9-3 year, a spark, something that gives you a chance to go in there and say, hey, listen, it's not just a facility. It's not just what we're doing in NIL. We're actually winning on the field right now, because that still goes a long way. So the longer you have to trick people, the more you become a trick. That's what I say.
I love that. The longer you have to trick people, the more you become a trick, which basically means you can only live with gimmicks for so long before
exactly
you got to just strap it up, line up, and may the best man win.
Illusions, Father. Illusions.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not saying that South Carolina has won by gimmicks or illusions or certainly anything like that, because there are three facets to football: offense, defense, special teams. But you do you wonder, like, I do these predictions and I am factoring in Beamer ball and special teams, but you wonder in some of these games, you look at last year and the swing games and games that went your way, you wonder if the special teams is even, or you lose the special teams battle, which I can't even fathom really. But if it's just even, does that change the win total for South Carolina? Like if South Carolina is just even, if they're at 0 on special teams, are they a 6-win team instead of an 8-win team, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. But again, that's another way that you can try and supplement not being great up front. South Carolina is the best example of that in the world when it comes to special teams. It won them games last year. Go back and look at it. It could have been a lot different if the special teams wasn't an advantage each year. Here's the truth. Okay, it's impossible to have any person, let alone college athletes, play their best game every single game, 12 straight times. You hear that you can probably get them playing at their best 3, maybe 4 times a year. That's including the bowl game, including the playoff. So when you're not at your best, can you win dribbling with your left? Can you win in a rock fight? How do you do that? You do that by having the advantage in special teams, and you do that by having depth up front. There's games, Georgia and Missouri last year. I can go through all these top teams, the Alabamas, the Ohio States, the Michigans, the Georgias. I can go through them, and there's games where they did not play well, where they are the most dominant. But how did they win them? They had enough depth and they had enough quality to be able to sneak it out. The trenches in college football are like rebounding in basketball. Sometimes the shots aren't falling, dog. And when they're not falling, you got to be able to get a rebound and go put it back up. You got to be able to dominate on the defensive rebounds, make them one and done on the offensive side. You have to be versatile. Versatility is the bestility.
Jake, before I go any further, how you looking on time, by the way? I don't want to keep you. I know you got things going on.
I probably got about 5 minutes.
Okay.
I got to hop in here. We're working on this special project, man. I'm like Owen Wilson behind enemy lines right now.
I love it.
I'm just looking for the beeping chair.
I love it. Well, Jake, I'll keep it short and sweet. I'm just curious because one of the things I talked about today, most important game, in my opinion, of South Carolina's football season. Are you when you look at schedules, I mean, are you like Auburn, for example, are you a most important game guy? Do you ever, I know in coaching, it's every game's the same.
No.
Okay.
It's every game's the same. That's the trick. As fans and, as prognosticators and media personalities, we can say, hey, man, this game, circle this one. It's going to be a big one. But as somebody that's been in it, that understands it, the goal is to treat every game the same. It doesn't matter if it's North Carolina, doesn't matter if it's Furman, doesn't matter if it's Georgia. Schematically, you adjust. That's the coach's job, right? To go in there and change the game plan and get the scouting reports done. That'll happen. But from a mindset standpoint, Nick Saban calls it the process, right? It's about the name on our jersey, not theirs. It is about blocking. It is about tackling. It's about doing the fundamental things right that we can control. Sometimes things happen that are out of your control. That's part of football. That's part of the game. But at the end of the day, if you worry about yourself and you treat every opponent the same, you make Monday the same, Tuesday the same, Wednesday the same, Thursday the same, Friday the same. Well, on Saturday, you're going to treat Saturday the same. So that's the trick, if you want to call it a trick, or goal, if you want to call it a goal. It's one game at a time. The most important thing that South Carolina is doing right now is that next workout. That's the most important thing. It's not North Carolina. It's not Tennessee. We can talk about it. That's great. But it's going and kicking that next workout's ass, because it is stacking days on top of each other and treating every day the same. That way you don't go out there on Saturday and you're like, man, we better play good. Everybody wants to play good. If you played how you felt or how you wanted to play, nobody'd ever play bad. But the way you get the closest to that is by understanding what is most important. And that is the next thing on the schedule, attacking that the best way you possibly can, because football is a lot of little things that add up to a big thing.
Well, Jake, for the sake of content, I will say that I labeled the Florida game as, and when I talk most important, you know, my thought process on that has changed, because last year I labeled Mizzou, Jake, as the most important game, because I felt like, you know, South Carolina cannot have a successful season if they don't take down Missouri at home. And sure enough, we all saw how it played out. I mean, the Gamecocks, nobody would sit there and label last year a failure, even with that loss to Mizzou, because of the way the season ended. So I've changed up my philosophy on that. I now just say, for South Carolina to, let's say, maximize the potential of their season, this is a game they need to win. I look at the game against Florida, Jake, and I feel like, too, for SEC East hierarchy purposes, in an East that's so jumbled up, 2 through 6, we'll say, really 2 through 7, right? Everybody's kind of fighting to make up ground behind Georgia and move up the ladder. I think that's one that this South kind of program desperately needs to take advantage of a down Florida. What say you?
Well, look, I mean, if it goes the way you think it may go these first 6 games, for sure, Florida's going to, if we're going to play this game, of which one's the most important, because you got to get off the schneid and get some good momentum going into the back half of the season. If I'm going to look at it in that perspective, I would say, to me, I mean, I got to go North Carolina, man, because, I mean, look, I mean, Spencer Rattler had a great end of the year last year, but people want to see it again. Can you be consistent? Can you be consistently good at the beginning of the year as opposed to coming on at the end of the year and figuring it out? I think if South Carolina, momentum's a real thing. Isaac Newton wasn't the only one that believed that. If you go and you handle business against North Carolina, you got a lot of positive momentum. You should be able to take care of Furman. And now you've bought yourself a little bit of insurance, not to go out there and play bad, but if something bad does happen, now all of a sudden you're not staring at 1-2 with a win over Furman. So I would say North Carolina, because you want to get it off to a nice start. It helps in recruiting. Everybody goes, I've been on teams that won the first game. I've been on teams that lost the first game. And after all the work you put into the offseason, going in there after that first win, it's an amazing feeling. It's like a Disney movie, man. You're just waiting for like animated birds to land on your shoulder and just breaking out in the song. As opposed to losing that first game, now you're like, oh no, you know, oh my goodness, are we bad? Are we worse than I thought? You know, you start questioning yourself in that way. So I'm going to go North Carolina. It's somewhat of a rivalry game. I know, you know, South Carolina and Clemson's obviously a lot more important, but at the end of the day, man, it's game one. It's prime time. It's one of the biggest games to open a week. And South Carolina, you know, that they're getting ready for beach season. They've been working out, running, losing a bunch of weight, ready to take your shirt off and show how jacked and tan you are.
It is a tone setter for year 3 of the Beamer era, no doubt. Jake Crane of Crane and Company. Jake, again, appreciate the well wishes, my friend. I know we'll talk next week on Friday, our normal time, but I am looking forward to meeting you in person, by the way, for the first time at SEC Media Days. Man, it's crazy to say that and think about the fact.
It's hard being this really ridiculously good looking. But no, man, congrats again. I'm on audio, so I can't see the chat. I'm sure somebody said something stupid and you're wrong. But outside of that, appreciate it, bro.
Hey, appreciate you, Jake. We'll talk soon, my friend.
All right. See ya.
Yeah, man. Take care. Great stuff from our friend Jake Crane. Guys, we're going to jump into a quick break. On the other side, though, our Q&A Power Hour gets rolling. I want to hear from you, 843-790-3377. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow.
Muscle Dougie, ho. Marshall Dougie, ho.
All right, guys, we're back here on this Wednesday, July the 5th, 2023. Again, appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. I want to say thank you to Jake Crane for taking the time to call in. I know Jake is a very, very busy guy, so we appreciate him taking time out of his busy schedule. They're working on some big things, by the way, at Crane & Company. Cannot wait for you guys to see. Very excited, though. The Q&A Power Hour officially gets underway, and I'm sure there's many of you out there who have thoughts, have reactions to my game-by-game predictions, especially as I've got South Carolina starting 3-3, 1-3 in SEC play. Let's get into some of your questions. Our guy, Austin Gregory, tuning in from Pollard's Corner, says, if you know, you know. He also says, long time no see. Stephanie Lee says, let's go. Austin says July is for recruiting. He also says the over-under for Robbie Davis is set at 7 minutes and 50 seconds. We'll see. Jeff Gullidge says, Chris, congrats on the SEC Media Days invite. Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate that. He says, who are the 3 players you think are going to go? Jeff, we'll talk about that on Monday. Let's do that. We will save that for Monday. I just think that, Jeff, that's content. I think that could be content. Yeah, maybe, I don't know. Maybe we'll save it for content. Maybe we won't, because we're going to be pretty damn busy, going throughout the rest of the offseason. So anyways, all right, let's jump to the phone lines.
From
Robbie Davis, Zaxby's Hall of Famer.
to accept, press 1.
My guy, Robbie, what's going on?
I'm doing pretty good. Just finished eating lunch.
My guy.
Congrats on getting your media thing, by the way.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Robbie. I appreciate it. Hey, I want to know, can you see the screen right now? You are the
Yes,
first. This is a new feature on the Daily Crow. So similar to Paul Feinbaum, for example, right? When callers call in, there is now going to be your own overlay, if you will. So everybody knows who's on the phone. Everybody knows who's talking. So fire away, Robbie Davis, the Zaxby's Hall of Famer.
This is pretty cool. Anyways, I just thought about this last week. I think that the games against Mizzou, and this is my personal opinion, the game against Mizzou and the game against Florida are very important for a lot of reasons, because those are 2 games that we should have won easily, in my opinion, but for some reason the ball just did not bounce our way for those 2 games. So I believe those 2 games are very important for us this season. And of course, it's very cliche to say every game matters, right? It's very cliche. No duh, every game matters. There's only 12 of them, and if you lose a game or 2, your chances of going to the playoff are slim to none. So I think those 2 games are very important. And I also wanted to say this. And like you said earlier on in the show, with the whole, eventually at some point, Vanderbilt is going to beat us, right? At some point, the winning streak against Vandy is going to be snapped. And my advice to South Carolina fans, or just any fan in general, don't panic, okay? It's not that big of a deal, okay? It's Vanderbilt. 2, if we lose to Vanderbilt, the sky is not falling, okay?
I will say, Robbie, you're gonna have a tough time convincing most Gamecocks out there to not panic if South Carolina loses to Vandy.
And that's and I'm not just singling out South Carolina fans. I mean just any fan in general, okay? Like, when, like, for instance, when and I know you don't really give a hoot about professional football, but whenever Ben Roethlisberger retired, I thought, oh crap, what are we going to do now? This dude's been the starting QB for over a decade for the Steelers. What are we going to do? And then next thing you know, we get Kenny Pickett, and I was very excited about getting Kenny Pickett. And so, anyways, I think that those two games are very key. And who was it? Jake Crane just called it.
Yes.
Yeah. He said that like he said, every game matters, but treat every game the exact same way. And my dad used to say this to us all the time whenever he coached in Little League football. If you practice great, you're going to play great. So we practice as if we were playing the next day, every single day. We practiced, and practiced. And whenever we got into the games, we played pretty well. We didn't win a lot of our games, but we played well enough where we had a chance. Does that make sense?
That does make sense, Robbie. Indeed. No, that does make sense. So, I mean, to Jake's point, listen, a lot of the most important game chatter, I will admit, is for content. But, and I'll say this, even if South Carolina, let's say I'm just dead wrong, Gamecocks beat Mississippi State and start out 3-2. I think even at that point, for South Carolina, again, to maximize the potential of the season, because you look at the rest of the way, a lot of toss-ups still left. You know, Texas A&M, I think you have to put Mizzou as a toss-up. At their place, I don't give a damn what you say. You got to put that one as a toss-up. But you got Mizzou's winnable. A&M, you beat them last year. You've got Vandy, Jacksonville State, you'll win. You've got Kentucky at home. You've got Clemson as well. You got some but you look at those outside of Vandy and Jacksonville State. I think Florida is, dare I say, that's the most winnable in my opinion of those toss-up games. And if you don't win that one, it's the most winnable. If you don't win that one, man, you're not going into the second half with the momentum you hoped you'd have.
And speaking of the Florida game, we definitely need to show that the game in Gainesville last year was an absolute fluke, because we are definitely a better football team than what we saw last year in Gainesville.
Yes. Robbie, there is no question about that, Robbie. You were correct.
So whenever that game comes, whenever I go to that game, I want to see 4 quarters of giving Florida hell. Not just from the players, the fans need to show up and give the Florida players hell for 3 to 3.5 hours. Make it a living hell. And show them that was a fluke last year.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting back-to-back because you'll have Tennessee bye week Florida. Tennessee is obviously a revenge game for the Volunteers. Florida's a revenge game for South Carolina, and I'm sure they'll approach it that way. So, Robbie, great to hear from you, my guy. I missed you over the break, man. It feels like it's been forever. So it's great to hear from you once again.
By the way, you got it set up was pretty cool.
I appreciate it, my man. Thank you. I love the setup as well. It's we continue to up and upgrade and to the moon, my friend, to the moon. So, like I said, I missed hearing your voice, Robbie Davis. I hope you had a fantastic 4th also, and I appreciate you. And again, hope you like the graphic, my guy. Hope you like the graphic.
That was pretty cool. That was pretty cool.
We're gonna have that for all of our regular callers. We're gonna have graphics for all of them. So, not to make you not feel special, but yours specifically. Nobody else says Zaxby's Hall of Fame.
Hey.
Just so you know.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. The one and only Zaxby's Hall of Famer. Thank you very much. But
I love it.
All right, and I did not get sunburnt yesterday, so that was a win.
Love that. A win's a win, Robbie. A win's a win.
All right, buddy. You have a great rest of your day, and go Cox. And to hell with Clemson. To hell with them.
To hell with them, indeed, my friend. Hey, Robbie, I appreciate you, man. We'll talk soon.
For sure.
Yeah, man.
All
Take care.
Buddy.
Great stuff from Robbie Davis. I think the under just hit, by the way. I think the under just hit. What did you have against 7 minutes? 7:48 is what I had, Austin. So the under just hit. Anyways, let's get back in your questions. We'll jump over to the Big Cock Club Discord. My guy Brendan M is I think he had a stroke when I think he had a stroke when I picked that Mississippi State game. So let's see. Austin Gregory mentioned this earlier in the show. Beamer's been an underdog 14 times. We've covered the spread 7 times. We've won outright 6 times. Pretty solid. Indeed, hey, we've played well as an underdog, for sure. We have played very, very well as an underdog. GA says your face reactions to the calls are missing. Sorry, my friend. Let's jump back to the phone lines.
Will from Dirty Myrtle.
Here we go. Will, what's going on, my guy? How are you? And by the way, be patient with me because all of these graphics are jumbled up. Here we go. We got you on the screen. What's up, man?
Okay, I just wanted to call and make sure that I had a graphic. At the time
my guy, you know you do, though. You're in the Discord. You know you do.
What's good, man? You enjoy your moving time off?
I am happy to be in the house. I'm happy for the studio to be set up, and I'm happy to have all of our things in the house. Moving, man. I mean, how enjoyable is moving? It's only so enjoyable. And dude, I'm telling you, people were like, oh, let's do a hangout. Let's do this, do a surprise stream. Bro, all I did last week was move. And all I did this past weekend, like the first thought on my mind was moving for the last 10 days. And so last night I was like, I'm waking up. We're doing the routine. We're doing the normal thing. I'm not thinking about moving, at least for the first half of my day. I don't mind unpacking, but moving sucks, bro. There's no other, it just sucks. It sucks. And you realize how many things you have when you move. So anyways, I'm not trying to be a grouch here. I'm just happy to be where we are. I mean, the house is beautiful and the studio is awesome. And obviously the new setup, I love it. But, moving just is what it is, man. It's a tedious task, but thankfully we are at the very end of it. So.
Yeah. Well, now you can enjoy it, Now
yes.
that you're in there, you can
enjoy
it. Yeah, man, it's exciting, man. I mean, we're in July. I mean, it's just we're getting close. I mean, we're really getting close to football season and my favorite time of the year. Just can't wait to get into it, man. I mean, it's prediction season, but like you said, I think you posted a couple of days ago. This is the last month where we don't have college football officially. Just awesome. When are you starting the simulations?
The simulations, yes. So that will actually happen. SEC Media Days will conclude that Thursday. I believe it's July the 20th. Yeah, because the Media Days are the 17th to 20th. Of course, we'll be there in Nashville. The plan is to start the simulations. I believe the date I had written down was the 23rd. So that Sunday after SEC Media Days. So I just, going to SEC Media Days, obviously, I don't want to start it and then take time off because we'll be away. But after Media Days, July the 23rd, I think we'll start. And the schedule is going to be, pretty much just we'll do Sunday night, Monday night, Tuesday night for 4 straight weeks or something, or 5 straight weeks. I don't know, something like that. So we'll probably do a bowl simulation game as well, assuming our simulation gets us to a bowl game. But now my guy SG1 Sports, man, he's done a great job with the rosters, and he's actually got a dynasty file on NCAA Football 14 that I've uploaded that is actually our schedule outside of Jacksonville State because they are not on the game. But we have the entire schedule laid out as the 2023 schedule is. So it'll be fun because we'll be able to keep up with the actual record itself and also stats, stuff like that. Also, an announcement on the simulation side of things. Previously, we have done 6-minute quarters. And that has taken us, the simulation's taken about an hour. I say, why not more football? The more the merrier. We're going to do 8-minute quarters in the simulation. So maybe we'll get some more realistic stat lines and scores with a little bit more football. So I'm excited for it, man. And again, it's something that's meant to be fun. Obviously, that content is just, it's a fun way to kill time in the offseason. So we'll start it. I think, July 23rd is that Sunday after SEC Media Days.
I mean, 6 minutes, 8 minutes, 8 minutes. I mean, it's 6 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 minutes, 8 minutes. I mean, it's 6
last year I found myself getting kind of hyped, at the TV. I put it on the TV out in the man cave, and I'm out there screaming at the game.
I mean, listen, one of the like it's incredible content because it's so absurd. It's not really meant to be taken all that seriously. Although I will say though, like the simulation hasn't been wildly far off where it's like, okay, Carolina's going 12-0. This is not realistic, or they're going 0-12. It's not realistic. Like I think last year the simulation had Carolina 7-5. Beating Clemson, I think. So,
I think the only thing last year was the Georgia game was the one that was kind of wild. But,
yes. There's definitely been some wild ones too. And of course, the maddening is when like you're down like 28-24 and you have the ball and you're kicking a field goal with like 5 seconds left, and you're like, well, obviously we'd be going for it. So it's not perfect, but again, it's just a great way to kill time in the offseason.
And how awesome is it going to be next year when we can actually simulate it on the new college football, which will be so awesome. Hopefully it'll be, so it's supposed to come out this year, right?
Yes, it was supposed to come out this summer. Next summer it's scheduled to come out, I think probably this time next summer. And there's been some stuff with the NIL stuff happening, but I do not think that is actually going to slow down or delay the release, because it sounds like that whatever objection they had, it got turned down very quickly. So I think we're going to have dude, I literally bought a PlayStation 5 for that reason. I'm not a huge gamer, dude.
Yeah.
I don't kill a lot of time playing video games. So I can't wait, man. It's going to be electric for sure.
Yeah, the two most anticipated games for me right now is that game and GTA 6 whenever that comes out. But anyway, Chris, I'll hop off all here and listen, man. Appreciate it, brother.
Will, I appreciate it, man. Thanks so much for the call. Great stuff. Our guy Will from Dirty Riddle. Guys, how you feel about the graphics? How you guys feel about the caller graphics? Again, if there's somebody that calls in that is new, I'm not going to have a graphic made, right? But if you start calling in regularly, these are our people that call in pretty regularly. So I'm glad we can do that, man. I think it's a really cool thing. It's a fun thing. You guys are able to see, hey, I just tuned in. Who's on the line? What's going on? So anyways, really, really exciting stuff. Our guy Todd Smith sent over the super chat. Todd, thank you, sir. Appreciate that, guys. If you want to support the business, support the channel, support the content, everything we do, you're on YouTube, of course, the only place to check out the Daily Crow. You can support us through Super Chat, Super Stickers, whatever it might be. Also, this setup right here is where the post-game call-in shows are all going to take place. Very excited for that. Hunter Kelly, are you having a watch-along for the North Carolina game? No, Hunter. So what we'll do, similar to the end of baseball season, we will watch the games together in the Big Cock Club Discord, and then 10 minutes after the conclusion of the game, we'll be set up right here live for our post-game call-in show. Our post-game call-in show will be right here, 10 minutes after the game, and that'll go 30 minutes, 45 minutes, maybe an hour, just depending on, the action, the traction, what how you guys are feeling, whatever. So, Craig Godwin. No, so Craig, it'll be 8 Saturdays. This Saturday will be 8 Saturdays until kickoff because we're at 59 days today. 59 days. Dale from East Tennessee. Chris, glad you got your internet back on. Thank you, Dale. Appreciate that. We are back. I'm glad to see that you are back as well. Oh, sorry about that, guys. I've got the phone line right here, and I just bumped it, so I apologize. Hunter Kelly says 12-0. For whatever reason, Hunter, I'm just not stunned you're picking 12-0. So Austin Gregory makes the point. Vegas gives us a better chance to lose to Furman than to beat Georgia. Guys, I know our guy Cody Gaskins is going to Athens. Shout out to him. I think he's picking that as a dub. God bless you. That's all I'll say. God bless you. Austin Gregory, Furman won 10 games last year. They are not a pushover. Indeed. Guys, really quickly, I do want to talk on it, and then we'll jump into a break, and we'll get back into your questions. But, the big news that happened over the last couple of days. TSUS headed to SEC Media Days in Nashville, Tennessee. And I detailed what was going on behind the scenes to you all, okay? So let me rehash what took place over the last couple of weeks because we've applied for SEC Media Days credentials before. We've applied for SEC baseball tournament credentials, SEC basketball tournament credentials, right? I've sort of stayed away from the South Carolina credential side because you guys know South Carolina feels some type of way, which is totally fine, is what it is. But I have applied before. We've applied and not gotten them. And so, I felt for quite some time, and credentials are not necessary for what we do here. You guys know that. I am a creator. I create my own content. My content is not reliant on having access. It's just not. I would argue that being in person at, say, a press conference or a practice, it actually does me less favors. I don't gain anything out of going. It's better for me to be on the home front, making content, tuning in digitally, which we can all do. So, anyways, but SEC Media Days is an event that I've talked about this before. Back in 2014, I recall watching SEC Media Days on SEC Network. And the 4-day event that it is, and just sitting there. I mean, obviously, this is way pre-TSUS. Sitting there, just saying to myself, man, like, it's a dream to be there covering this event, man. It's a dream to be talking sports for a living and be talking Gamecocks. Just be talking SEC. Just be covering sports for a living. Sports is your job. And so fast forward now to 2023. I'm grateful to say that over the last couple of years, I've been covering SEC Media Days full time. Heck, since 2019. I've been doing it full time. Really, actually, I guess I got to say since 2020, because summer of 2019, I was not at SEC Media Days. That was the bridge between Charlotte and Columbia doing it full time. I was actually in New York at the time, building up the nest egg to get the business off the ground. So since 2020. But over the last couple of years, especially last year, I was confident that, hey, what we're doing here with the Spurs Up Show, what we're doing with content, what we're doing with business, all of the above, that we are deserving of going. I am deserving of getting in that building and getting inside and getting that quote-unquote access, if you will. I am deserving of attending that event. Bottom line, period, end of story. And so going into this year, I just thought I'd change up my tactic a little bit. I was like, what do I need to do? Because I feel like, you guys all know, right? We are on South Carolina's blacklist, right? There is a blacklist, and the Spurs Up Show is on it, which is totally fine. It's silly. It's absurd. It's ridiculous. It's petty. But as Steve Fink, Kent Reichert, if the University of South Carolina, if they want to keep that energy, they can do it. Holding grudges only hurts a person with the grudge. So, a couple of weeks ago, and I don't know if I mentioned this part, but a couple of weeks ago, I went out of my way to send Steve Fink an email because I've communicated with Steve Fink before, right? But I sent Steve Fink an email and said, listen, I have aspirations of not just talking Gamecocks, but talking the entire SEC. And this is an event that I've always wanted to attend. And I can't help but feel like, and obviously, again, guys, I didn't say this word for word, but I said, I understand that you guys feel some type of way. You got TSUS on your blacklist, if you will. I am asking simply that I'm not asking for your blessing. I'm not asking for you to like me. I'm not asking for any of that because, guys, honestly, I don't give a damn. What I'm asking for you to do is get out of the way. That's what I'm asking for you to do. I'm asking for you, allow me as a content creator, as someone who wants to pursue ventures outside of South Carolina one day and talk about SEC ball and talk about the other teams. Just because you're petty and upset and you don't like that I said fire Muschamp a couple years ago, or you don't like this take I had, do not limit someone of opportunities in life that they've earned. Let's call it what it is, that we've earned. TSUS, we've earned the opportunity. And I'm grateful for the opportunity from the SEC. And, of course, Steve Fink responds, Chris, you're not on any quote-unquote blacklist that I know of. The SEC media days, they take typically credentialed media. I would expect them to do the same. Best wishes, whatever. All good. I don't need him to acknowledge we're on blacklist. I just needed him. I liked knowing he got the message. Couple days later, I emailed the head of the SEC, one of the top guys, and I got his name and his contact info from somebody in the South Carolina space, media guy, and I'll leave it at that. Sent him a long email just detailing, hey, this is who I am, this is what I do, and this is why I feel that we would be an asset at SEC Media Days and why we are deserving of attending the event. Okay? Just wanted to build relationships, network, put a good foot forward. Couple days went by, got nothing. Couple more days went by, got nothing. Got no response. And so I was just like, you know what? Maybe he got the message. Maybe he didn't. I'm going to apply for this. If I don't get it, so be it. No big deal. Let's just get it out of the way. Put in the application for credentials Thursday morning, or maybe it was Wednesday. Either way, Wednesday or Thursday of last week. And I'm sitting there Friday afternoon and get the email from the SEC that we have been approved for credentials. And you guys saw my reaction. I posted a video reaction for you all to see. When I tell you that I was elated, when I tell you that I was ecstatic, listen, I have to think that the email that I sent to the SEC helped tremendously. Maybe Steve Fink stepped out of the way. I have no idea. Or maybe the simple fact that those who were in charge of that process saw the Spurs Up show, saw the work we're doing, and said, why are they not here? It makes less sense for them to not be here than to be here. So, I am, number one, grateful for the opportunity. I'm thankful to the SEC for giving me a chance, and it is one that I will most certainly take advantage of. I cannot, listen, again, credentials, TSUS, we are not reliant on credentials. We are not, it's whether we'd be talking SEC Media Days and covering SEC Media Days, whether I was there in person or not. But I'm also not going to sit here in front and act like it's not a big deal. I'm not going to sit here in front and act like it's not something that I'm extremely excited to go do, because you can almost look at it as like the most badass networking event somebody like yourself, like yours truly, could go to. You could almost look like the most badass networking event I could ever attend. Guys that we've had on the show, guys that I want to have on the show that I've never met in person, so many people that I've had on the airwaves that I've never met in person, and to be able to go there and mingle and interact with and make content with. So many great content creators and rub shoulders with those folks, and hey, get in those rooms and meet some of these coaches and ask questions and stuff like that. I cannot wait for it. I am so ecstatic. I am so excited, so grateful for the opportunity. And again, it is one that we will make the most of, and just can't wait to get to Nashville, man. I mean, it's literally, it's going to be here before you know it. I mean, guys, it's in less than 2 weeks. It's in less than 2 weeks. SEC Media Days will begin. Of course, Shane Beamer will speak 2 weeks from tomorrow, right? Yes. 2 weeks from tomorrow. Yes. 2 weeks of the date from tomorrow. So, it's something, guys, I genuinely, when I put in the application, I had zero expectations, because I was like, well, here we go again. I had zero expectations. I didn't have much hope at all, and I wasn't certainly attached to the end result. But, I'm stoked, man. I'm stoked because, again, it was a dream. It was a dream, whether it was covering South Carolina or talking to somebody else or doing something. It was a dream of mine to go to SEC Media Days. It was a dream to be in that room and just be talking ball and sports be my job, or sports be my thing that I do. And the fact that I get to go to SEC Media Days as my own independent content creator, as my own independent entrepreneur, I mean, I'm ecstatic, guys. I'm ecstatic. I'm ecstatic. It honestly, going to SEC Media Days, it trumps any other credentials I could have gotten. Because, people don't believe this. Believe it or not, guys. South Carolina, Steve Fink could call me right now on air and say, Chris, you know what? We changed our mind. We want to give you credentials to all the football games this year, all the access to practices, all the access to press conferences. I would decline. I would 110% decline. And it's not because I'm trying to stick it to them. It's not because I, want to say screw you. It's because I want to be in studio making content. I want to be in studio following along. I want to be in studio doing things. Again, guys, I talked about the flexibility, efficiency. I didn't have to leave Columbia. We didn't have to go. We didn't have to leave Cola. But I wanted to do other things besides. I knew that there's an advantage to being in studio creating content during game. And again, someone who doesn't create content in that manner and somebody, the common fan is not going to understand that. But when you guys are watching the games and you're seeing content on your phone, well, hey, that content's got to get created by somebody. You know, it's got to get posted. It's got to get produced. It's got to get made by someone. And so, I mean, if you just think about it for longer than 2 seconds, you know, there's no debate that it is far greater an advantage for TSUS, for yours truly, to be in the studio during game day, to be in studio during press conference, even to be in studio. Like, I don't want to sacrifice doing the Daily Crow because South Carolina has a practice I got to go to. I don't want to do that. I have no interest in that, right? We are in our own lane. We're not in a box. We're doing our own thing. The joy is in the journey, man. I'm enjoying every step of the way, and I'm so excited that the journey will take us to SEC Media Days in Nashville, Tennessee in just a couple of weeks, man. It feels crazy to say that. And honestly, it still feels kind of surreal, but I cannot wait to get there. Guys, that being said, we're going to jump into a quick break. On the other side, I want to continue to hear from you more of your questions, comments, calls, and more. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow.
Muscle Dougie Ho, Dougie Ho. Marshall Dougie, ho.
All right, guys, we're back here on this Wednesday, July the 5th, 2023. Again, guys, appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Hope you all enjoyed your 4th of July, your extended weekend, and really, really excited to be back after. I'm sure many folks out there are fighting a bit of a 4th of July hangover today. I feel like it's probably a really prevalent thing in the offices, in the cubes today, if you will, on the job, whatever it might be. But no, guys, really appreciate you all being tuned in. Let me know your thoughts on the new layout, man. New stew alert, man. It's for those in the Discord, we'll have to do somewhat of like a studio tour, if you will. They've all seen it via pictures and stuff like that. But I love the setup. We'll probably play with the lighting a little bit. It feels maybe a little bit on the bright side. I've got blackout curtains in here now. We got some natural, we got natural lighting though. We've got some other light lamps, and we got the ring light, which is pretty intense. I might play with that a little bit, but all in all, the setup is tremendous. I'm so happy with the way everything turned out. And again, I appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. I've got the mouse now, so I'm able to like go through the comments and stuff, having to lean forward, and got the phone here as well. Also, those in the Big Cock Club Discord, if I'm not responding to you as much as I normally do, I don't have a little laptop right here. So I'm not going to be typing out, responding quite as much as I used to in the Big Cock Club Discord, but certainly reading your reactions. They're giving me hell. They're giving me hell in the Discord. My guy Dalton says, no way we lose to Mississippi State at home. Biggest slap dick take ever. I hear you. That's going to be one. I have not posted the graphic yet. I've only posted it in the Discord. That's going to be one that people really want to give me hell for. Anyways, Frank says, let's get you a plant. Frank, there's actually a plant. I'm looking at it right now on that side of the studio, and we felt like a plant right here would just be too busy. And obviously, we've got the football, we got the helmet, we got the signed Beamer Ball hat by Shane Beamer, by the way. Of course, we got the Beamer Rattler 22, and I'm actually going to replace this here soon. I'm going to replace, that's signed by Spencer Rattler, by the way. I'm going to replace that soon with the Beamer Ball to the Moon tour shirt with the football schedule on it. I think that'll be a really nice touch. So, anyways, yes, Frank, we do have a plant in the studio. John Edwards says, I'll say we beat Mississippi State. Listen, there's a very good chance Carolina beats Mississippi State, guys. I get it. I get it. But let me ask you this. Do you really think the season's going to go chalk? Carolina's just going to win all the ones that it's obvious. They're going to lose all the ones that it's obvious, and that'll be the end. Dude, this is Carolina. Had I picked a loss to Mizzou at home last year, you would have thought I was bonkers. You would have thought I was crazy. It happens, guys. This is Carolina football. It happens. And Carolina's not past that yet, I don't think. They're not to the point where that's just beyond comprehension. That's the old Carolina. I don't see that. I don't think they're there talent-wise. That's my biggest thing. Guys, I'll tell you this right now. I'm not done making predictions. Tomorrow we'll have part 2. I'll lock in my final 6 games, and then you will all know my full predictions for the season. But I'm going to tell you right now, guys. You comparing the 2022 Gamecocks to the 2023 Gamecocks. I think last year's team was better. Bottom line. I think last year's team was a better football team. I'm not telling you Carolina's going to, win less games. I'm not telling you I think last year was a better football team top to bottom. I really do. I genuinely do. Now, again, does that mean that South Carolina's not going to go win 8-9 games? Does that mean Carolina's not going to have a very successful season? No, but looking at it on paper now, and on paper, we know how much that's worth. On paper, no big deal. But on paper, I think the 2022 Gamecocks were a better football team. Jeff Gullidge says, those who can't see the possibility of us losing to Mississippi State haven't been Gamecock fans long enough. I mean, Jeff, that's a single-digit spread, no question. That is a single-digit spread, no question. And I want to look up really quickly. My guy Chase, by the way, made a great point. If I want to type something, I guess I could just use my phone. But I don't want to sit here like this, typing in the Discord. Whatever. All right, let's jump to the phone lines here.
Call from
Frank.
Our guy Football Frank on the line. What's going on, my friend? How are you?
Hey, buddy. How are you? Happy 4th of July.
I am doing well, my friend. I got to tell you, don't be too mad at me now. I got to get your graphic made, okay? We don't have the graphic made yet. I knew I forgot a couple of folks out there. So I will be getting a Football Frank graphic made. I do apologize, though, for today's show. I appreciate you calling in.
Anytime. Hopefully it has a cement truck on it.
Hey, we'll do it. We'll do it. Whatever you like. I mean, if you want your tagline to be something different, we can put it whatever you like, my friend.
I'm fine. You can't make up your own nicknames.
I love it, man. How was the 4th for you? How have you been lately, man? It's been a while since we heard from you.
Fantastic. I had to go on a sabbatical after the baseball season.
Yeah, no, I mean, dude, it's been, end of June is peak off season. I mean, it really truly is, man. And there's, outside of recruiting, and recruiting has slowed down somewhat for Carolina, so we haven't gotten, the big commitments to kind of hold us over or anything crazy like that. There's been a couple here and there, but nothing outrageous. So, which I think July, by the way, on a side note, I do think July things are going to pick up, especially towards the end of the month. But yeah, man, I'm just happy though, Frank. We've made it to the point that we're talking college football. We made it to the point we're talking Gamecocks football. I'm so excited about that, my friend.
100%. And I heard it. The Mississippi State thing. I had even in the 7-5 scenario, I got us beating them. But you could swap that out with Texas A&M, Missouri. I just felt like a home game was a better win. Would be an easier win for us than beating Texas A&M away, or. So, but like I said, even with 5 losses, I still have a team. But that's not here nor there. North Carolina, got one game at a time. That's the one we got to win. And according to somebody in the ACC, they're the 12th ranked defense in the ACC.
They were, Frank, they were abysmal last year. And we'll do, so we'll actually do in a couple of weeks, probably the week, I don't know if we'll do it the week of SEC Media Days or when we'll start it the week of SEC Media Days or following that. But we are going to do opponent previews like we did the team previews for the other team. So we're going to get a UNC guy, and we're going to get these guys on detail these teams. But, yeah, you read up on them, man, they were terrible defensively. I mean, they were Gene Chizik, not quite getting it done.
Yeah, I mean, and then when they went to specific categories, like against the run, they were 164th in the country. So if you're going to take advantage, I mean, if we have the weapons we have on offense that we think we have, I mean, I guess that's gonna be where we can take advantage. Now, the score sounds good, 31-27. I mean, that sounds good. Maybe a little less for them if we get special teams.
Yeah.
Some little special teams magic, and maybe 35-27. But look,
dude, I
don't care.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, Frank, I could see it being 38-34, 34-30. Like, I see it being some sort of offensive game like that. I went a little bit less. Like, I thought, we've talked about this a little bit, the gambling side, but the over-under set at 60.5. It just, doesn't it feel like in those games where it's like, it feels so obvious, oh my God, just hammer the over. This is so no-brainer. It's like, the game happens, and then you're like, oh yeah, it's week 1 with 2 new offensive coordinators and 2, dare I say, inconsistent quarterbacks. So it could be a game that starts out slower than expected and is slightly a little bit lower scoring than expected. I'm not saying it's going to be some defensive ball game. It's not going to be. But I could see it going slightly under. I'd be surprised. Let's just say this. I'd be surprised if both these offenses are humming and it's like 45-42. And I also just don't think South Carolina's defense, even though they have questions, I don't see the Gamecocks defense surrendering that many points. I don't see. I think I'll tell you this, Frank. If South Carolina loses to UNC week 1, I think it's because the offense is struggling to get going under Dowell Loggins, and Spencer Rattler has reverted back to some of that inconsistent play, or the Gamecocks are one-dimensional, right? Just flat out one-dimensional, can't do anything in the run game.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be because the defense gave up 50. Like, even though I think the defense could take a step back this year, I don't think the defense will be the reason Carolina loses if they lost the game.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at maybe special teams wise, and I'm not looking at any crazy, punt returns or block kicks. I mean, even if when we flip the field on them, getting them pinned down at the 10, 7 single-digit yard line, and then working on defense from there, it just gives our guys a little better of a chance.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the special teams aspect I'm looking for. I'm not looking for, someone to run a ball back 98 yards or block a kick or something like that. Just the basic special teams part where we can keep them back and take it. Because I think the more shots we get at their bad defense, the better off it's going to be for us. So let's hit them deep, force them into making errors, and just try to keep our guy clean. If he starts getting rattled, and starts throwing the ball away, it's going to be a nightmare for us. We can't afford that in week one. Oh, this is not. Look, this is an away game for us. I don't care what you talk about, neutral site, this and that. That's clearly what these Vegas people are thinking. First week, this is an away game. I mean, maybe that's what the score is, what is it, 60 and a half?
60 and a half, you would see 1.5 point favorite. And I mean, dude, they've been a favorite the entire offseason, man. Like, they've been the favorite since the jump.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't look at the line on it yet, but it's probably close to like 110, which means they're calling it 50-50. Even with those odds, they're still calling it a 50-50 game. There's going to be no value in the bet.
Right.
You're going to have to put a ton of money down and hope to squeak out a win. But yeah, that's what they'll do. They'll just give you no value on it. They'll call whoever, because I don't think they do any research on South Carolina, to be honest with you. I mean, that's why I was all over them with that season total win of 6. I just think they get lazy and they're like, well, South Carolina 6-6.
Well, and we know Vegas. We know Vegas doesn't favor Carolina. They don't do them any favors for sure. I mean, no. I feel the same way as you, my friend. The over-under win total is, if you got to take anything, man, I think you got to take the over. I think you got to smash the over on the win total. But, we'll see. We'll see. So,
well, yeah, I did. I smashed it pretty good. But now that's going to be pretty dependent on that North Carolina game, because then the road just gets to, and I even have so much scenarios us being 4-4 after the Texas A&M game, which I know is going to make people about as happy with your Mississippi State bet. But, listen, that's just how it's going to go. And we just got to keep our momentum going for those last 4 games. That home stand. But, it is what it is. That's why you bet.
That's why you bet. Frank, I appreciate I appreciate you calling in, man. We'll get that graphic made, Frank. Next time you call in, you're going to have Football Frank on the on the tube. So you'll have to make sure you check that out.
No rush, my friend. No rush, my friend. Hey, congrats on your credentials.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much for the love, Frank. We'll talk soon.
Have a good one. Bye.
Yeah, man. Thanks. Great stuff from Frank. Appreciate him calling in. Always a pleasure to chat with him. Let's see. Craig Godwin says a favorite is 7 points, not 1.5. Craig, I'm just surprised it's not Carolina 1.5 instead of UNC. Why is UNC the favorite? I know 1.5 doesn't mean anything. I get that. I get that. It's basically a pick 'em. But the fact it's even a pick 'em, like, I'll tell you this, Craig, and I believe somebody in the Discord posted, I think I did this. Yeah. Which, by the way, shout out to GA for this. Shout out to our guy GA in the Discord. Back on February the 28th, I gave my predicted Vegas spreads for each game, whether South Carolina will be a favorite, underdog, slight favorite, pick 'em, slight underdog, what have you. I thought for sure, guys, I really, and I still, like, if I'm setting the line today, I'm making the Gamecocks a 6.5 point favorite. I don't understand why the spread is with. I don't get it. I do not get it. I do not get why UNC's favored in that ballgame. I have no clue. Let's go back through some of your questions. Again, I feel like I missed a lot of them. I know I did. I know for a fact I did. Let's see. Okay. I know there was a lot of reaction to the game-by-game predictions, the Mississippi State pick especially. Let's see. Okay. Austin Hicks said, I think Media Day should be Juju, Spencer, and Juice, biggest seniors on the team. Can't think of any defensive players to come. I mean, Austin, you got to send somebody. How about Tonka Hemingway on defense? How about Tonka Hemingway? Austin Hicks, Big Cock Club members, yes, you will get a discount. When the store relaunches tomorrow night, you will get a discount. Yes. Your promo code is still active. I will make sure that is the case. Ethan says, I think Kentucky gets revenge, but we get revenge on Florida and Missouri at home. Clemson, I am torn about still. Okay, so you got the Gamecocks losing to Kentucky, but beating Florida and Mizzou. Clemson, a toss-up still for you. Yeah, I tell you this. I don't think DeCarrion Joyner goes back just because, like, you like to get some other guys opportunities. I mean, Dak Joyner went last year. I could see them sending somebody else. I'll say that. Austin Hicks, I feel like Spencer has earned the right to go, being the face of the offense, and he is good at interviews. Indeed. Let's see. Okay. Craig Godwin said, we should be taking advantage of Mizzou going 500 every year, but haven't so far. We have to beat them this year. It's a huge game, Craig. I mean, here's the thing. Mizzou has turned into what the Kentucky game was in the mid-2010s. That has turned to that new streak where it's like, we're all so ready and so anxious to see Carolina take the next step, to see them ascend and take, let's say knock out Tennessee for number 2 in the SEC East. You can't do that until you start beating Missouri. You just can't do it. Like, that's what's so maddening about it, is feeling like this program is on the edge, but like, you lose games like Missouri. You lose games like Kentucky. Like, you just can't do it, man. You just cannot do it. You cannot sit here and justify to anyone that South Carolina's program is, it belongs up there with the upper echelon of the SEC when you're losing to Missouri. You just can't do it. You can't do it. I agree. It's a huge game. Ethan said, teams will be double covering Juice with their secondary. I'm hoping Leggett or Lewis will be consistent at the second and third options for Rattler. Again, guys, a couple of weeks, we'll begin our position unit preview series, and we'll break down all of this. We'll break down all the position units. Let's see. Frank said, if we score 21 against Georgia, I'm rushing the field. I mean, I'm telling you guys, I don't know how many times Carolina will cross the 50. I just, dude, they beat you 48-7 last year, and it could have been far worse. Like, what about last year to this year? Why would you, unless Spencer Rattler can catch lightning in a bottle. But here's the thing. That came against a Tennessee secondary that was terrible. A Tennessee defense that was terrible. This is Georgia, guys. This is Georgia. I mean, the only thing about Georgia this year is maybe you say, okay, they got this new quarterback. They're replacing things on defense. But, I mean, dude, come on. A guy like Cody Gaskins going who wants to believe the Gamecocks are going to pull the upset, God bless you. And I hope it happens. Obviously. We all hope it happens. I don't see it, man. I don't see it. I really don't see it. Brian Dean, on that note, says, I got the Gamecocks 27-24 over Georgia. It is going to be a statement game showing the Gamecocks have a right. Brian, I respect it. And listen, I'll tell you this. I respect all predictions. I said that last year. I'll say it again. I respect all predictions. Georgia will have to play their D- game, and Carolina will have to play their A+ game. And it'd probably be 27-24. The talent gap, man, is that wide. It's that wide. It's that wide. Austin Gregory says, if we lose to State, I'm going to lose it. Cody actually says, I'm going to agree on the Mississippi State game. I hate to, but I also tend to believe that's a game we come in too relaxed and indeed get trapped. Austin Gregory says, I think our trap game is Kentucky before Clemson coming off 2 consecutive wins. Austin, when I label a trap game, it's a game that you're going to be favored to win. You should win. You feel like you should be able to kick it in the win bucket, and maybe you come in a little bit sleepy and you lose. My friend, Kentucky's not a trap game. Kentucky's a toss-up. It is Kentucky might be favored going in that game. You might look at me crazy. There's a chance Kentucky, I haven't looked at their schedule, but I'm telling you, Devin Leary, Liam Cohen, there's a chance Kentucky's an 8-win team this year. There is most certainly a chance. You guys will know my full SEC game-by-game picks on Friday. That's not a trap game. That's a toss-up. Austin Gregory says, you got us struggling to put up points on offense a lot. What's the reason? Even we had General Zevic quarterback, we scored more points than what you're predicting. Are you sure about that, Austin Gregory? Are you sure? Are you sure about that? And struggling offensively. I've got Carolina scoring 31 against UNC, 35 against Furman, 10 against Georgia, 17 against Mississippi State in an upset, 28 against Tennessee, 31 against Florida. I don't think that's like porous offensively, but Austin, we'll talk about it much more in depth next week. Dowell Loggins has to prove it to me. He's got to prove it to me. How much it's going to be an upgrade over Sack, guys. How much of an upgrade, we just don't know. You cannot sit here with 110% confidence and say, because you know what this sounds like? People are saying, oh, we're just going to take the last 2 games and do what we did, and we're going to do that every week. That sounds identical to what people were saying this time last year. Well, the bowl game against UNC, we're just going to copy and paste and do that every week. And look, it's not that simple, man. It's just not that simple. And so, Austin, I especially think early in the season, listen, man, you can't run the ball. Explain to me why you think Carolina will be able to run the football. I'll wait. The floor is open. I'll give you from now until kickoff to explain to me why Carolina is going to have a better running game than last year. I'll wait. You counting on a guy from Mercer to step in and start on the offensive line? You counting on a guy from Charlotte? Come on, man. Why? Give me some real reasons. Maybe those guys pan out. Maybe Lonnie Teasley pushes all the right buttons, and I think early on it's still a new offensive system. It's still a new OC. Hey, we don't know what to expect from Dowell Loggins in-game calling plays, guys. We don't know what to expect. We have no idea. And something else that sticks out is, just do what you did in the last 2 games. Guys, Spencer Rattler was as good as he was against Clemson. Dude, if Clemson goes down, if they don't fumble that punt, let's just hypothetically, if they don't fumble that punt, they go down the field, kick a game-winning field goal, we're not talking about how brilliant Spencer Rattler was in the final game. We're talking about the interceptions he threw. We're talking about the critical mistakes he made. But we're not talking about that because Carolina won the football game. So I think Clemson game Spencer Rattler is what you're probably going to get. If you can get that level of consistency, you'd probably take it, because you're not going to get 6 touchdowns, no picks on a weekly basis. You're not doing it. You're not getting that. You're not. Something closer to like what the Clemson game, ideally if it could be in between the Clemson game and the Tennessee game, right? limiting the turnovers, but still the great dynamic connection between Spencer Rattler and Juice Wells. But guys, South Carolina is going to have to run the ball. And especially early in the season when they're trying to figure, who the hell's RB1, man? When they're trying to figure out how to manufacture a running game, Austin, I think the offense could struggle just a little bit. I think the offense could sputter, right, early on. There's 6 more games to go that we'll talk about tomorrow. And I will just tell you this. I think South Carolina, there's a good chance. I think there's a good chance they'll be a better football team in the final 6 than they were in the first 6. We saw it last year, man. Everyone thinks that because Marcus Satterfield's, and he was terrible, guys. Sat was terrible. We know that. Abel Loggins is better than Marcus Satterfield. How much better? We don't know. And you cannot sit there and say confidently, he's Steve Spurrier calling plays. Like, we don't know. I don't know. He'll be better, but how much better? And how much does this offensive line handcuff Dowell Loggins? Because guess what, guys? You can have the best play call in the world. If you can't block, it don't matter. It does not matter. So, Austin, I don't think my my offensive outputs, excuse me, in the first couple of games, I don't think they're all that bad. I mean, I guess I'd turn it on you, Austin, and say, do you think Carolina is going to be some offensive juggernaut this season? Because I mean, guys, even with Tennessee and Clemson, the Gamecocks average, I think, what was it, like 20? What was it? Without the special team stuff. If you take away special teams and defensive touchdowns, what was it? I think Carolina averaged like 24 points per game. We need our guy Coleman Hall in here. He had all these stats last year. But it was I got to see it. I got to see it, man, especially early in the season. Brand new OC. I think there's some things that have to get figured out on the offensive side. I really do. Continuing through your questions. Let's see. Austin Gregory. If we start 3-2 with a win over UNC, that would totally suck. Why would that totally suck, Austin? 2 losses being to Georgia and Tennessee. Georgia is a for sure. Like, I'll go ahead and say it, guys. Georgia's a for sure L. I give you 1% chance to win that game. I'll give you 1%. I will give you 1%. 1% chance to beat Georgia. You're going to lose that game. Of all the toss-ups, guys, I'll tell you this. Of all of the toss-ups that I listed, Tennessee, to me, is the most likely L. There is no way Tennessee loses to South Carolina. There's just no way. I want to believe it. After maybe Spencer Rattler just owns the Vols. After what happened last year, Carolina destroys their playoff hopes. I don't see it. I don't see it, man. If there's one game circled that Tennessee will be ready for, it's going to be the game against the Gamecocks. Neyland will be a madhouse. And if the game's at night in Knoxville, forget it. Forget it. Forget it. Forget it. I mean, I hate I'm giving you all some very just brutally honest takes here. When I look at all the toss-up games, the 8 that I listed, Tennessee is my like I told you guys, there's some you lean more towards the win column or the loss column. To me, Tennessee, I lean very heavily to the loss column. You have to put it as a toss-up out of pure principle because of last year. But I don't see any way South Carolina wins that game. I just don't see it. I don't see it. I'm not telling you Joe Milton's going to win the Heisman, but Tennessee's going to have that game circled. They will be ready. They will be ready. Lynn Turner says, and this is really interesting. Lynn, I've seen your comments. I disagree on Mississippi State. Beamer ball does not match historical Gamecock football. You can't talk about what we do historically with the current staff. Lynn, what has happened in the first 2 years for you to say that? Because losses to Mizzou in Florida last year fit Carolina football historically to a T. That is exactly Carolina football for its entire existence. And Lynn, remove the historical aspect. Fine. Here's why I'm picking Mississippi State. Again, this is college football. Expect the unexpected. It's not going to go chalk. There's going to be some craziness that happens. Some of you out there think Carolina's going to beat Georgia. Okay, like crazy things can happen. Look at last season, guys. I mean, who would have seen that finish of the season coming? Who would have seen it playing out that way? Who would have predicted Spencer Rattler to have 5 touchdowns and 8 interceptions through like 9 games last year? Like, who would have predicted that? Or through 6 games last year? Who would have picked that? So you got to, admittedly, when you're making predictions, you got to go against the grain a little bit. And so, Lynn, though, I'll give you football reasons why Mississippi State will beat South Carolina. I know the games that Willie beat. It's never popular to pick a loss at Williams-Brice. I understand that. North Carolina is a coin flip game for me. I could very well see UNC winning the game. Again, South Carolina has deficiencies on both lines of scrimmage. That is a fact. That's not an opinion. That's a fact. I guess it is an opinion because we don't really know yet. But in my opinion, I feel very strongly that you're going to have to overcome that. South Carolina can overcome it. They did it last year. But you'll have to overcome that. I think there's a very good chance you finish outside the top 100 in rush offense and rush defense again. But you're going to have to overcome that. UNC, in my opinion, Lynn, and everybody else, does not have the athletes up front to expose you. I don't believe they do. But Mississippi State does. And they got a quarterback just as good as UNC. I think Will Rogers is one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC, extremely underrated. I'm not saying top to bottom that Mississippi State is better than Carolina, more talented across the board. But coming off the loss to Georgia, coming back home, yes, it'll be a spot where I think you're looking for the bounce back, but it would not shock me if South Carolina is still kind of trying to find their footing offensively, defensively. You got 2 new corners in Marcellus Dial, Odell Fortune. You're very thin at the cornerback position. What is the run defense going to be? And I understand the Pirate, rest in peace, he's no longer with us, but to think that Mississippi State's just going to fall off a cliff, they might not be as good as last year. They got some things they're going through, obviously, but it's a game that no doubt to me is a toss-up, and I could see Carolina losing. And I think Mississippi State's got the athletes up front to, at minimum, make life tough on Carolina, and they've got the quarterback to beat the Gamecocks. These are just predictions, by the way, Lynn. It could not happen. Carolina could very well start 4-2. But if I'm looking at a game that sets up for that typical type of ball game, it's that one. It's that one. Because, again, guys, you want football reasons. If UNC had an SEC caliber line of scrimmage, they're beating South Carolina. I believe that. I fully believe that. Mississippi State has that, and they got a quarterback just as good as Drake May. So there's your football reasons for why. Guys, let's jump into one final break. We've only had one break this hour, but I'm having a lot of fun. We'll go into one final break. On the side, we'll take more of your questions, your comments, your calls, and more. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow.
Muscle Dougie, ho. Muscle Dougie, ho.
All right, guys, we're back here on this Wednesday, July the 5th, 2023. Only 3 days of content, or the Daily Crow, I should say, this week. But we're back, rocking and rolling. And, of course, guys, we're on normal schedule. You know, it's crazy to think about. Last week, you know, I took the whole week off. Granted, I was moving every single day, so it certainly didn't feel that way. But we will not have a break in the action till Christmas. I mean, really, truly, guys, I've got my entire preseason planned. It's all ready to go. The calendar is set week by week by week. The content. The only thing that could be a bit wacky is SEC Media Days, because I think what we're going to do, because you guys know the SEC Media Days schedule, right? Coaches speak. That typically happens like in the morning all day long. TDC, I can tell you for certain, will not rock noon to 3. What I think would be really cool and what we could do is doing TDC late night, something like 6 to 9 o'clock, something like that, or 5 to 8 even, doing it after the fact and recapping the day that was at SEC Media Days while also covering the things that we want to cover content-wise, having guests on, stuff like that. So it's going to be an exciting week either way. I know you guys will roll with the punches, but yeah, going to be a lot of fun. Let's get back into your questions here. Jeff Gullidge was reacting to the picks. 3-game losing streak. Yeah, I mean, it's what I got, man. It's what I got. Ethan says, we do seem to win in bunches and lose in bunches at times. Home field advantage is big, but you never know how the offense will look after the Georgia game. Hopefully, we won't stay down for long. Yeah, I mean, this is a streaky game. This is a streaky game. Luke RJ, he says, that ain't Beamer ball, year 3. That ain't Beamer ball. I hear you, my man. I hear you. Austin Gregory, if we lose 3 in a row to Georgia, State, and Tennessee, people will be calling for Sellers to start. Not me, but I know people will do it. Yeah, I mean, Austin, I don't put it past you. I don't put it past anybody. I don't totally doubt it. Austin also said, agreeing with Lynn Turner, put Mississippi State in the automatic win category with Vandy, Jacksonville State, and Furman. If they aren't in that category, they're very close. That's fair enough. That's fair enough. Austin Gregory, Cocktober. Indeed. Yeah. Cocktober, I think it'll be good to South Carolina. 34-24, Craig Godwin, I think he probably had in the Florida game. Austin Gregory, Mississippi State ain't beating us. I will bet the house on it. I'm more scared of Vanderbilt than Mississippi State. Wow. Hayden, what's going on, Hayden? He says, I got us going 4-2 for the first half with a win over Mississippi State. 9-3 overall. I don't think there's anybody out there who would not take 9-3. Austin Gregory, I'd rather trade the UNC win for a conference win over Tennessee or Georgia, but unfortunately, that ain't how it works. Yeah, the hypothetical games, not particularly how it works. Lynn Turner, will you stop with the it's South Carolina football stuff? New culture, new team. Again, Lynn, I agree with you. This is a new culture. It is a new team. I'm not even saying the culture is the reason that's happened before. Again, Lynn, I've said this. I think the reason that South Carolina has been so inconsistent over the years is the line of scrimmage and problems at line of scrimmage and problems at quarterback. I think that has haunted this program for quite some time. You got the quarterback this year, but Lynn, you still got issues up front. And so I think that could lead to inconsistencies. Good and bad, by the way. Good and bad. Craig Godwin says, if we start 1-3 in SEC, we might start losing some top 25 prospects or some 25 prospects. I don't think so, Craig. I mean, listen, there's a lot of season left, by the way. Let's get that out of the way first. There's a lot of season left. There's a lot of season left. I think as long as you're winning 7-8 games a year or more, I think you're fine in recruiting. I do. I think you're fine in recruiting. Austin Gregory, Will Rogers is the most overrated quarterback in the conference by far. Austin, how? Who even talks about this guy? Who talks about Will Rogers? And all he does is throw tutties. I know the system. I get it, the air raid, but like, I guess we'll find out. Craig Godwin says, we got to stop with the what Carolina has done in the past. This staff is different, and this roster's trending up. We can't always sit around and wait for the other shoe to fall. Craig, I hear you. I hear you, Craig. You're not wrong. Lynn's not wrong. I'm just giving you my honest predictions, my honest takes. And you're very right. This is new culture, new team. This will be the new Carolina. Well, I got to see it. You want me to, like, if Carolina, all right, let me just say this. I'm trying to find a way to phrase this. To start getting the benefit of the doubt that you are seeking and others are seeking, I'm just giving you predictions. I'm not setting limiting expectations and limiting beliefs on Shane Beamer and company. I'm not doing so. But until you stop losing games to, and here's the thing too, guys, just you've got to be realistic with Carolina is from a talent standpoint. I don't think Carolina's as good as last year, guys. And I know Austin was talking, when are you going to drop best case, worst case? I think we might do that Friday. My best case last year was 8-4. Last year. And I think this team isn't as good as last year's. So, I mean, I just, bro, to put it past Carolina to lose a game, a toss-up game to a Mississippi State, to put it past them to lose to Kentucky, to put it past them to lose to Mizzou, I'm not there yet. I'm just not there yet, man. Those are toss-up games for a reason. I don't think I'll tell you this. I don't think, and you'll know tomorrow my full game-by-game predictions, I don't think I'm that down on Carolina this year. I'm really not. But the SEC is extremely difficult. And Carolina's not, they're not, in my opinion, guys, and Craig, again, thank you for the question. I appreciate you tuning in. And Lynn Turner, I mean, again, I could tell she was upset earlier. Here he goes again. Just stop. We're not that team anymore. Lynn, I disagree. I think South Carolina is, and it's not even an insult, but there are a lot of teams. South Carolina, Vandy, Florida, Tennessee even, Kentucky, Mizzou, all these middle-of-the-pack teams. Where on any given Saturday, Carolina can go out and put up 63 on a Tennessee. They can also go out and lose 38-6 to a Florida. They can go out, they can beat a Texas A&M. They can also go out the following week and lay an egg against Missouri. Lynn, how can you say we're not that team when it happened last year? Exactly what I'm saying happened a year ago. I'm not saying this is the 1990 Gamecocks or we're winning 2 or 3 games a year, 4 or 5 games a year, but I'm just saying that, like, the SEC is really difficult. And to think you're going to go, if you got 8 toss-ups, to think you're going to go 7-1 is crazy. Like, you're going to lose a couple. Like, you just are. You're going to lose a couple. I mean, I feel like you'd be saying the same thing no matter who I picked, whether I picked them to lose to Mizzou or Kentucky or, like, guys, South Carolina football is on the rise, but South Carolina football is not beyond losing a game that it's a touchdown favorite in. I mean, they're just not. We're not past that. We're not past that yet until proven otherwise. Maybe we are, and I'm not giving credit, but, like, 2 games is not enough of a sample size to say, well, Carolina football has changed forever. If you're not picking us to win 10 games this year, you're crazy. We're just head and shoulders better than these other teams. The only team that, you're acting like we have a seat at the table with Georgia, Alabama, and LSU. Like, we don't. Not yet. Not yet, Carolina does not. Not yet. I feel like you're pinning me. I'm getting pinned into a corner where it's like I'm sounding so negative about Carolina. I'm just keeping it real. Like, and I didn't expect the Gamecocks to go to Atlanta in year 3 of Shane Beamer. I have very realistic expectations. But South Carolina, to insinuate they're just beyond losing a game that they shouldn't lose, come on, man. I mean, you know better. That's not to say we're just the same old Carolina football, but guys, forget the past. The SEC this year is ultra competitive. Missouri is a very good team this year. They're a quality team. Kentucky is going to be a much better team. Tennessee is going to be, I think they're continuing. I don't think they're going to fall off. I understand Mississippi State's an upset pick, but guys, upsets happen. This is college football. This is college football, man. My guy Chase Floyd says, join the BCC. It's kind of like OnlyFans with sports. Good God, get you off the screen, sir. Sheesh. Lynn Turner, don't get into the what if thing with the Clemson game because it also could have been bigger and the what if scenarios. Lynn, I'm not even really getting into what if of like this. I agree with you. Carolina could have beaten Clemson by 2 touchdowns. But there is no what if hypothetical about Spencer Rattler made some questionable decisions. He made some bad decisions in that game. That interception in the red zone, that was a horrific decision, a back-breaking decision. Lynn, I know you agree. He's got to improve. He's got to eliminate those. I mean, guys, I don't even want to, like, the fact that I'm bringing this up, I hate to be this guy, but I think it supports the argument. I know it's a spring game. I know it doesn't matter. I get that. But even the play in the spring game where Rattler was flushed out the pocket, and hey, maybe he thought the play was over. I don't know. But you know what he did? He forced the ball into coverage, and it would have been a pick 6. But that, like, to me, guys, like that, Rattler will do that. He'll do that. I think even in the best offensive scheme, like Rattler's a gunslinger, man. He's kind of like a Brett Favre. He's got some Brett Favre in him where he's going to have moments of brilliance and he trusts his arm. Sometimes he trusts it a little too much. If he can, and again, we'll talk a lot more about this next week when I break down defense, offense, special teams, get really in the nitty-gritty of those 3 facets. But limiting turnovers has got to be priority number 1 for Carolina. It's got to be. They can do that. They can be very productive offensively. But they turned it over at an insane clip last year. Insane clip. They were abysmal last year. One of the worst in college football at the turnover margin. Frank says 5-7 worst case, wheels come off. Train goes off the cliff. 9-3 best case, good bowl game. Frank, I agree with you. It's a wide range of possibilities. It is a wide range of possibilities for sure. Austin Hicks says, a lot of people are going to be very disappointed this year. If we did better in the portal to fix the weak spots in the roster, I think that we would be a better team. But I'm afraid we won't be better. And I guess you never know. But I just look at the football team and the guys, I say this. You got less returning starts up front. You got less returning starts on the offensive line. You have no proven RB1 in the slightest. I think a receiver, you could actually be better. I think Juice Wells, if Xavier Legette comes into his own, if Eddie Lewis can be that guy from the portal, right? If Amarian Brown can take a step, if De'Carrion Joyner can continue to help you, whether he's at running back or receiver, I think receiver could actually improve, okay? You bring Spencer Rattler back and the tight end position. I like Trey Knox. We've heard rave reviews about Joshua Simon, but do those guys, I know you're going to hate me saying it, do we get the same amount or more production from those guys than what you got from Jaheim Bell? I know he was lacking, but that's just a question. Defensively, you lose 6 of your top 8 snap count-wise in your front 7. Linebacker could be better. Linebacker could be better, but still an area of concern. And in the secondary, yes, you have Imamori and Smith back, one of the best safety duos in the SEC, but guys, 2 new corners. And I like Marcellus Steiner, done a fortune, but you lose Cam Smith, you lose Darius Rush. I think it's an insult to those guys to say that, oh, we'll feel no drop-off. The corner will be fine. Like, so, there are questions. I mean, there are questions for me. And yes, John Edward, my game-by-game predictions will be finalized tomorrow. Yes, they will be finalized. Got a text here that says, don't forget about Harbor at wide receiver. Absolutely. How much of an impact does he make early on? I don't know. I think he's a guy by midpoint in the season, and I could be wrong. Maybe he's out there starting week 1. I don't know. But realistically, I think by midpoint in the season, that's when he's starting to really make an impact, and late in the season, I think he could become a big part of the offense. It's about him learning the nuances of the receiver position. And I'll say this before I get into Luke RJ's comment. I'm not asking you to agree with me. The beauty's in the banter. The beauty's in the banter and these predictions and talking ball. This is fun, man. Carolina could win 10 games this year, and I could be completely wrong. That's what I want to happen, guys. You all know that. Do I really have to? I don't have to explain that to you all in these airwaves. Y'all know how I operate. I hope Carolina goes 15-0, wins it all. But I'm going to give you my realistic predictions, and I don't care whose feelings I hurt in the meantime. We're going to hurt some feelings here. It happens. We may end up hurting some feelings, right? As the puppy makes an appearance. It is what it is. We keep it a buck. We keep it real. John Edwards says, this is a new Carolina. It may not show this year, but it's truly different. I'm not disagreeing with you. I think it's a new Carolina as well. But the new Carolina, what does that mean when you square up and you buckle the chin strap and you go on a Saturday? What does that even mean? John Edwards said, I got 4-2 with wins against UNC, Furman State, and Florida. Losses to Georgia and Tennessee. So we're 1 game off. We're 1 game off. Luke RJ says, I completely agree with your predictions and breakdowns, but I believe 5-1 is still possible. We can beat Mississippi State and Tennessee only if Loggins is consistent every game and much better than Satterfield. I tell you this, Luke RJ, if Carolina starts 5-1, they are the lead storyline of college football. They're the lead storyline of college football. Who knows? Loggins could be the next Steve Spurrier. I got to see it, though. Again, more on that next week. I got to see it. I still think there's question marks with what he's going to do with the offense. And it's a new scheme, new system. Is it really as simple as, well, we're just going to hit the ground running, pick right up where we left off. We're going to score 60 a game, and nobody's going to beat us. I don't know if it's that simple, guys. I don't think it's that simple. So, again, first 6 games of the year, I've got 3-3, 1-3 in SEC play, with probably the most notable result being week 4? Week 4, a loss to Mississippi State. We shall see. One final question, we'll get out of here. Jeff Gullis, is going to come down to Loggins, his play calling, and his ability to adjust when things don't go to plan is going to be the biggest difference. Yeah, Jeff, that's a huge question mark too. Not about what the scheme is, because we're not reinventing the wheel here. We know what the scheme is. What type of in-game play caller is Dowell Loggins? What type of adjustments does he make? What happens when he has to go off script? That, my friend, is the biggest question around the Gamecocks' new OC. Guys, that being said, we're going to get out of here. Appreciate you all tuning in. Thank y'all so much for the continued love and support. Hey, be sure you subscribe on YouTube. Hit that like button. Hit that bell icon so you get notifications when we go live. Also, tune in via podcast. The podcast will drop today, 5 p.m. Eastern on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts as well. Be sure you check us out. Rate and review also on all the channels I just mentioned. Guys, thank you all so much. Appreciate you all tuning in. Have a great rest of your Wednesday. We will talk to you all tomorrow.